Good afternoon. Convening the Committee on Consumer Protection and Commerce. It's March 19th, 2024, 2 o'clock in room 329. First on the agenda is Senate, Rabbi. Yeah. Okay. Okay, members of the audience, if you are testifying, please come up to the podium, or we will call you on Zoom. If you are testifying, please limit your remarks to 2 minutes, and you hear the alarm go off after that, and very soon thereafter, I will ask you to wrap up your message. And with that, first bill on the agenda, Senate Bill 2536, Senate Draft 1, House Draft 1, related to procurement preferences and reciprocity. First up, we have Bonnie Kakakui, State Procurement Office.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chairs, members of the committee. Bonnie Kakui for the State Procurement Office, and we will stand on our written testimony. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, Cory Kubota, Accuracy LLP.
Hi, good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Ted Shiraishi on behalf of Cory Kubota and Acuity LLP. We'll stand on our written testimony in support and available for any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other persons wishing to testify on this measure? Seeing none, members, any questions? Okay, seeing none, we will move on. Next, Senate Bill 2505 related to Public Utilities Commission. First up, we have Michael Angelo, DCCA, Division of Consumer Advocacy.
Good afternoon, Chair, members of the committee. My name is Mickey Knox, here for the Consumer Advocate. We stand on our written comments, but I'm here for any questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Chair Liu Assumption, PUC.
Good afternoon, Chair, members of the committee. My name is Grace Ralph, testifying on behalf of the PUC. We'll be happy to stand on our written comments in support of this measure and would be happy to answer any questions you have. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. That's all of the testifiers I have listed. Anyone else wishing to testify on this measure? Seeing none, members, any questions? Seeing none, we will move on. Senate Bill 3010, Senate Draft 1, House Draft 1, related to renewable energy. First up, Chair Liu Assumption, PUC.
Hello again, Grace Ralph with the PUC. We'll stand on our written comments and can answer any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We have other people who have submitted testimony, but none of them indicated that they would be here. Are there any other persons wishing to testify on this measure? Seeing none, members, any questions? Seeing none, we will move on to Senate Bill 3365 related to plant care components. Hawai'i Department of Agriculture.
Good afternoon, Chair, members of the committee. My name is Jonathan Ho. I'm the acting manager for the Department of Agriculture's Plant Quarantine Branch. We stand on our written testimony in support and with some comments, and we're here for questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Brian Miyamoto, Hawaii Farm Bureau.
Good afternoon, Chair, members of the committee. Brian Miyamoto here on behalf of the Hawaii Farm Bureau. We're in support of this measure. Chair, we do suggest friendly amendments. We just want to make sure that these containers or these plant care products are treated at DOA facilities. So we do suggest on page 1, line 10, to include or add an HDA certified quarantine facility upon approval to Hawaii and within 1 mile proximity to the harbor. Again, we want to limit the spread of invasive species, and these products do have potential to spread the further they get, and if they do, or if they are untreated. We're in strong support, and we appreciate the legislature's attention to invasive species. We're at a critical point right now, so thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Okay, thank you very much. Hunter Haviland, Hawaii Farmers Union. Not present. That's all the persons I had signed up to testify. Any other persons wishing to testify on this measure? Seeing none, moving on. Yes. Oh, yes, question.
For Department of Ag. Hi, thanks for being here. In your testimony, you requested or you suggested an amendment.
Yes.
Can you explain this and how important it is in regards to this bill and the process?
Yeah, so for standard biosecurity measures, the treatment of commodities, when required, should be done prior to entry. As Mr. Miyamoto said before, having the commodity untreated come into the state and then be treated after the fact does pose some risk. If it's infested, you're going to have to open the container to do that. And obviously, we don't want to do that if at all possible. Hence, most commodities require treatment prior to entry. And then secondarily, there is, I guess, somewhat of a weird legal issue with regards to entry. Legally, from a legal standpoint, a good or commodity is not considered entered until it's been basically released. So the way this bill is written, you would essentially have to release the commodity, because that's the only way to have it enter the state, then have it treated after the fact. And at that point, we really don't have jurisdiction. Hence the idea of having it treated beforehand. You would make sure it complies, release, and at that point, it's free to go.
Okay, so you're suggesting that when the material comes into Hawaii, it then be placed under quarantine so that it can be treated?
That is a standard practice which we do for goods that can be treated, but we would not want that to be the standard. That's the exception. We would prefer the requirement to have it treated prior to, and then should it come in without a fumigation certificate or a heat treatment certificate, we would then like the ability to deal with it from a quarantine standpoint, but we don't want to do that for every container. That we don't have the manpower for that.
Okay, but can the state of Hawaii require those materials to be treated before it arrives in Hawaii?
Yes.
How do we go about doing that? Or why isn't that done now?
So right now, there are no specific restrictions for the plant care materials, but for example, you have things like green coffee, radishes. I mean, there's a whole bunch of goods that require treatments prior to entry for pests. So we do that now already, and again, hence the fact why we're suggesting that in this measure.
Okay, so the department would do the initiative to require the treatment. It's not needed for legislation. I mean, you don't need legislation for you to do that.
That is correct, but in this particular bill, it's saying that it needs to be treated after entry.
Right,
So
then department would.
right, but what we're suggesting is have it treated beforehand, then you don't need to have that secondary treatment. Yeah, that's what we're
Okay,
suggesting.
thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Members, any other questions? Seeing none, we will move on. Senate Bill 2500 related to value-added products. Dane Wicker, DBED.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. Thank you for scheduling this bill. DBED Deputy Director Dane Wicker, Department of Business, Economic Development and Tourism. we stand on our testimony in support. In addition, I want to provide some comments in speaking with our value-added producers across the state, the cottage industry. They were still operating during the pandemic. When we learn about their businesses, what some of the challenges are, it comes down to infrastructure and facilities that's preventing them from scaling up. Oftentimes, they don't have the commercial space or the equipment to scale up. And it will be difficult for the state to pick certain companies to give grants to or loans to, or even to spread that type of funding throughout the state. So what we've been exploring and working with the Leeward Community College as a hub is a food innovation network that will establish facilities across the state, with Leeward Community College being the first phase as they incubate and create new products. And as those entrepreneurs graduate out, they'll need additional space to test their product, test the market, and scale up. And that's where this bill comes into effect by helping to solidify phase 2, which will be the responsibility of the Agribusiness Development Corporation, as they'll continue to create facilities across the state, not replicating. It'll be dependent upon the geographical region and what that microclimate provides for both livestock and produce. This also provides another avenue for our farmers, who up to 40% of their produce don't go to market, these off-grades. Value-added producers can go in and buy these off-grades, providing more revenue to the farmers. We ask for your support in passing this measure. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Wendy L. Gady, Agribusiness Development Corp.
Good afternoon, Chair, members of the committee. I'm Wendy Gady. I'm with the Agribusiness Development Corp., and we stand in very strong support of this measure. For instance, it's really imperative that it happens this year, because if you took the 10 million visitors that come every year, and if in 10% of the cases they had a $25 ag product in their suitcase headed out the door, that's a $250 million injection into the economy. That means jobs, that means taxes, it means rural development, and it means we get started this next year. I'm here for any questions. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Brian Miyamoto, Hawaii Farm Bureau.
Thank you, Chair, members of the committee. Brian Miyamoto here on behalf of the Hawaii Farm Bureau. We will stand on a written testimony in strong support. Mahalo.
Thank you very much. Next, Micah Munikata, Ulipono Initiative.
Good afternoon, Chair, members of the committee. Micah Munikata here on behalf of the Ulipono Initiative. We'd like to stand on our testimony in strong support of this measure. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much. That's all the testifiers I had listed to be present. Are there any other persons wishing to testify on this measure? Seeing none, members, any questions? Okay. Seeing none, we move on to SB 3335. House Draft 1 relating to cannabis. First, Nadine Ondo, Director, DCCA. Not present. Jordan Lowe or Jared Redula, Department of Law Enforcement.
Good afternoon, Chair, members of the committee. My name is Jared Redula. I'm the Deputy Director for State Law Enforcement. We'll stand on our written comments expressing serious concerns. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Garius Suganuma, Department of Taxation.
Good afternoon, Chair, members of the committee. Winston Wong on behalf of the Department of Taxation. The department stands on its written comments and testimony that summarize the administration of the new cannabis tax bill, the estimated revenue impacts, as well as the required staffing required to implement this bill. We'll be available for questioning thereafter. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Cheryl Kakazu Park, Office of Information Practices on Zoom.
Oh, I'm here.
Oh,
Hi. We stand on the testimony just recommending a deletion of the special meetings provision because this is going to be a sunshine law board. We have no comment on the substance, the rest of the bill. Thank you.
okay, thank you very much. Dave Day or Andrew Goff, Department of the Attorney General.
Chair Nakashima, members of the committee, Dave Day, Special Assistant to the Attorney General. The Department of the Attorney General offers the following comments on this measure. The Attorney General is the Chief Legal Officer and the Chief Law Enforcement Officer under the Hawaii Constitution and provides legal advice to all three branches of government. As the attorney for the legislature, our duty is to advise the legislature of risks associated with the given course of action. Attorney General Lopez has made very clear that federal illegality, the growth of the illicit market, driving while high, and concerns regarding public health and protecting children are serious issues associated with legalizations. These concerns are outlined in our report and can have real-world impacts on public welfare. The testimony of our department on these risks, along with that of other law enforcement officials and county prosecutors and public health officials from the Department of Health, should be given serious consideration before proceeding with this matter. No effort to legalize cannabis, however carefully planned and well-intentioned, will be without such problems and risks. The purpose, however, of cannabis legalization legislation should be to acknowledge these risks with open eyes and attempt to do the following: promote a legal market, minimize risks of societal harm, mitigate damage that does come to pass, avoid liability to the state, and provide workable tools to law enforcement and public health officials to promote the public welfare. We've highlighted several areas in our testimony of areas where we believe which should be changed. One of them is addressed also in University of Hawaii's testimony. That concerns provisions that would mandate that colleges and universities allow students and faculty to use cannabis in faculty housing and student housing. That would include dormitories. And we believe that that is against the public welfare and certainly against Commerce and Consumer Affairs. We have other changes. Happy to address your questions later. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Brenna Hashimoto, DHERD.
Good afternoon, Chair, members of the committee. My name is Brenna Hashimoto. I'm the Director of the Department of Human Resources Development. I'll stand on our written testimony providing comments, and also I've suggested 3 areas which we'd like your consideration for amendments to address the presence of cannabis in the work site. Thank you. I'm available for any questions.
Thank you very much. Steve Vaughn, Honolulu Department of the Prosecuting Attorney.
Good afternoon, Chair Nakashima, members of the committee. The Department of the Prosecuting Attorney stands in strong opposition to Senate Bill 3335, Senate Draft 2, House Draft 1. My name is Steve Alm. I am the Honolulu prosecutor. My number one job is public safety, and legalizing marijuana will make Hawaii less safe. The first thing I think that we really got to focus on is how strong marijuana is today. It's not the 3% back to Woodstock days, which our younger colleagues won't recognize. But back in the day, it was 3%. Now it's 20, 30, 40%, concentrates over 90. Legalization will cause overall usage of marijuana to increase. The black market increases in all these states that have legalized. Our keikis brains are developing into their mid-20s. At 3%, marijuana use wasn't a big deal. At 40%, you're going to have a profound impact. I urge you, if you have not had a chance to already, read the testimonies of Dr. Ryan Shepard and Dr. Rachel Sai Layug. They're both child and adolescent psychiatrists. And as Dr. Sai Layug would say, because of the close association with schizophrenia, there are going to be more kids developing schizophrenia, and it's going to cost millions of dollars to treat each one, both medically and in the criminal justice system over the years. And we'll have more fatal car crashes. We'll be prosecuting more cases of manslaughter and more cases of negligent homicide. There is no test currently that law enforcement, that HPD would have to test people for driving under the influence of marijuana. Yes for alcohol, no for marijuana. There are going to be more robberies and violence at marijuana grows. I don't say adult use marijuana because, let's get real about this. No matter how you try to limit it to adults, you can have ID checks at the weed stores. They're going to get it, just like with tobacco, just like with vaping, just like with alcohol. And this isn't reefer madness. I was a judge for 15 years. And
Prosecutor, if you can start wrapping up.
okay, we don't have enough treatment beds currently, but we certainly don't in the future. And the last thing I want to say is, I think there's some folks think it's inevitable that marijuana is going to get legalized. Well, we actually looked at that, and in 2023, 20 states considered whether to legalize or not. Only 3 said yes. 17 or 85% said no. They saw the dangers. They said no. So I encourage you to be part of that majority and just say this isn't the right time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mike Lampert, Honolulu Police Department.
Good afternoon, Chair, members of the committee. I'm Mike Lambert, the Honolulu Police Department. I'm the current major of the Narcotics Vice Division. We stand in strong opposition of SB 3335. I just want to kind of bring people up to speed on some of the previous committee comments. One was that it's going to be moved to Schedule 3. Schedule 3 is still a pretty powerful or dangerous category. So it's not like it's being removed from the federal guideline. It's just being downgraded. As a Schedule 1, it was viewed by the federal government to have no medical merit. Now at a Schedule 3, they're acknowledging that it may, right? So just to put it in the classification, you're talking about codeine, ketamine, testosterone, and anabolic steroids. So it is not being removed. It is being put into a different category of other powerful substances. The other was there were some concerns with not having true data or increase of crime. When you talk about percentages in Honolulu, you're talking about thousands of reported crimes. So if you have only about a dozen, you're not going to see a percentage increase, but it's the type of crime that it brings. As a report from the Oregon Liquor and Cannabis Commission, their industry is about $1.2 billion. That commission is projecting that their black market is twice that size. If you guys Google or do any research, you guys will see that in Oregon, there's literally thousands of illegal grows. I'm telling you guys right now that the Honolulu Police Department and none of the counties will be able to take that on. The most impacted are going to be our rural counties. Big Island is going to get lit up. Kauai, all these places where you have trees now, you're going to have a different kind of tree, and we're not going to be able to take that on. So I strongly urge that we do not pass this bill. Our law enforcement can't take it, and the future impact of our keiki is too great. So I encourage you guys to go ahead and turn this down. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. We've reached the end of the agency participation. Are there any other agencies that wish to speak? Please.
Good morning, Chair Nakashima and members of the committee. I'm Lola Irvin. I represent the Department of Health, and we did submit a written testimony, so we apologize if that is not in your records. I have my colleague here, Michelle Nakata, who's also head of the Office of Medical Cannabis, and so we're here. She is here to respond to any questions on policy, and I'm here to speak on the comments we have from the public health perspective. So the Department of Health has the responsibility to care for the health and lives of people of the state of Hawaii. And it's with the goal of achieving health equity, which means assuring every person has the opportunity and the supportive environment to attain their full health potential. So that is the responsibility that brings us here today as public servants, with really comments expressing grave concerns on the implications of commercializing the production, distribution, and sale of recreational cannabis. In reviewing the literature of what is happening across other states that have legalized the use of cannabis, the harm is greatest for children, youth, and young adults. So here are some highlights from our written testimonies. So you'll see that babies exposed to cannabis during pregnancy are more likely to have lower birth weight and have abnormal neurological development. Despite this, 7% of women in the U.S. say they use cannabis during pregnancy. The number of children 6 years and under poisoned by edible cannabis increased by 1,375% from 2017 to 2021. This included hospitalizations. And as was mentioned earlier, adolescents and young adults who regularly use cannabis are more likely to develop future psychotic disorders such as schizophrenia and are more likely to develop cannabis use disorder. You have seen me come before you before because of youth e-cigarette use. Youth who use e-cigarettes and start vaping are 3.5 times more likely to move on to vaping cannabis. So based on the experience of other states and the commercial production and sale of cannabis will increase access to children, youth, and young adults with detrimental effects on their health and socioeconomic potential. We have included...
Excuse me, the 2 minutes is up. If you could start wrapping up.
Sure, okay, thank you. So we have included charts attached to our testimony for this committee based on the frequently asked questions on data in Hawaii. So you'll see that attached, and we do note that 24% of young adults aged 18 to 24 report using cannabis. And this corroborates with our concerns in terms of youth who 10 years ago we noted were using e-cigarettes and we asked for policy for restricting flavored vapes. They're now moved on to using cannabis in their vapes. So we thank you for your consideration of our testimony and are available for comments and questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other agencies? Yes.
Sorry, Chair. Thank you. Jan Govea on behalf of the University of Hawaii. We apologize that our written testimony was not received by the committee, and we'll be sure that you get a copy of that. But in short, we object to specific sections of the bill that relate to faculty and student housing. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. My name is Gary Yabuda. I'm the Executive Director for the High Intensity Drug Trafficking Area Hawaii region. It's a program under the Executive Office of the President. It's a grant-funded position to support state, federal, and local law enforcement fight drugs. I have 45 years of criminal justice experience, 31 years with the Maui Police Department. I began my career in 1983, and as a rookie, I worked for the DUI Task Force. And back in those days, I would come across drivers who were totally incapacitated, but they didn't have any alcohol symptoms on them, but they had marijuana symptoms. They reeked of marijuana, and that's the 3 to 6% that Prosecutor Alm talked about back in those days. And there's nothing law enforcement could do because there was no testing mechanism. There was no breathalyzer, nothing to measure scientifically how much a person was under the influence of marijuana. 40 years later, right now, nothing's changed. There is no testing mechanism for marijuana to determine the amount of influence of marijuana on a driver. That's the problem. I'm taking off my police officer hat, and I'm talking as an executive director. There's 33 HIDA regions throughout the nation, representing almost all the states in America. Not one of my 33 HIDA directors favors marijuana because they see the devastation of legalized marijuana in their states. It takes at least one day to study all the issues on why not to legalize marijuana. At least one day. I've done that for the last 5 years. I ask you to really study the issues that are coming out every day because it's overwhelming. The bottom line is there'll be an environmental price tag, a social price tag, a consumer price tag, and so on and so on. This is Hawaii, and in 45 years in the criminal justice system, this is my biggest fight. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other agency folks want to speak? Okay, thank you. And next we have Jacqueline Moore, Hawaii Island Grown Dispensaries.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Jacqueline Moore, co-founder and CEO of Big Island Grown Dispensaries. We stand in strong support of SB 3335. Cannabis use is very prevalent. There's already a prevalent market largely dominated by illicit and unregulated sales. What we're looking to do is actually protect the community and end consumers by creating some kind of quality standards that need to be met for the greater good of the end consumer. This issue's been largely ignored for far too long, and we genuinely appreciate you listening to this measure today. We are sensitive to the cost considerations, and to that end offer the following information. Projected tax revenue in the initial year is close to $40 million. After program maturity, we're looking at over $100 million in generated tax revenue. Please consider reducing upfront costs by funding social equity programs, other initiatives, and enhanced law enforcement out of initial tax revenue. Massachusetts, Maryland, Alaska, New Mexico have all launched successful programs for under $10 million. And lastly, please consider utilizing existing resources to eliminate the need for an appropriation. SB 3335 transfers the Office of Medical Cannabis Control and Regulation from the DOH to the new Cannabis Authority, and with that goes 17 staff members, a $3 to $4 million operating budget, $2 million in revenue from patient registry, medical cannabis license fees, over $2.5 million in GET taxes, as well as proposed conversion fee projected at close to $2.5 million. Leveraging existing regulatory resources and experience is the logical move forward to effectively launch an adult use program. Thank you so much for listening today. Aloha.
Thank you. Next, Tai Cheng, Hawaii Cannabis Industry Association.
Good afternoon, Chair. Vice Chair, I'm on Zoom. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good afternoon. My name is Tai Cheng. I'm chairman of the Hawaii Cannabis Industry Association, and we've submitted written testimony in support of SB 3335. I wish to summarize a few points from our written testimony. We provided a revised new tax revenue estimate of almost $40 million in year one and $109.7 million in new tax revenue by year four, based on a $429 million annual cannabis market. The current annual medical dispensary sales for the state of Hawaii have already reached almost $70 million this year, with almost $3 million in GET collections. If we were to believe that only half of the medical patients come to dispensaries, then the total medical market is already almost $150 million here in the state of Hawaii. We ask that the committee consider avoiding high upfront appropriations. The current DOH OMCCR office testified on March 1st of last year that $5.3 million would be sufficient to kickstart the legalization measure SB 669. The OMCCR office plus 9 new positions was contemplated in that budget. We submit that the current increased medical dispensary licensing fees and the proposed licensing conversion fees that are provided in SB 3335 would be enough funds to start a new legal program. The program's additional bells and whistles can be funded through the almost $40 million in new tax revenue that we expect in year one. SB 3335 is one of the few measures proposed this year with the potential to generate new tax revenue for the state without imposing. Without imposing additional tax burdens on residents and existing businesses. So we urge this committee to pass this measure to effectively regulate cannabis, enforce rules against the illegal market, the illicit market, safeguard the public, and generated this new tax revenue. Hawaii will be the last Democratic-controlled state to legalize. Let us join the other 24 states, as well as the District of Columbia, in legalizing cannabis. I'm available for any question. Thank you very much for your time.
Okay, thank you. Alan Johnson, Hawaii Substance Abuse Coalition.
Good afternoon, Chair, members. I'm Alan Johnson with the Hawaii Substance Abuse Coalition. Thousands of kids come into treatment every year. 75% of them now are for marijuana. We also see a large number of kids coming in the emergency room with psychotic episodes due to high-potency marijuana. So we oppose this bill, but we recommend what some states have wished they'd done, which was have a year-long educational informational campaign first. And we present in our bill there, some amendments there that list the top 5 things that you would have in an educational campaign that the leading expert recommends. And then further, just to summarize our other amendments, we suggest that if the bill passes forward, we recommend the CD language that is missing in the warning language, that put that in there. It's not problematic, but it's good to have in there. And lastly, we would say as well as with the school, if you're an abstinence-based substance abuse residential center, we should not be able to use marijuana because we treat marijuana addiction, and we don't want to be a site that uses marijuana. All right, thank you for your my testimony. Appreciate your time.
Thank you very much. Jason Hanley, Care Wailua Multi-Card Medical Cannabis Site.
Aloha, legislators. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, aloha. Thank you for allowing me to give testimony here. I've also submitted written testimony and available for questions. I just want to add a few comments as quick as possible. My name is Jason Hanley from Care Wailua Medical Farm, the largest patient-based medical farm in Hawaii. Our 1,000 members oppose SB 3335 legalization bill. The state of Hawaii has made no effort to hold public meetings to discuss legalization and has now divided its people massively. Instead, the state traveled with the Attorney General and legislators to Massachusetts to bring back a legalization bill. No state to date has legalized successfully. Many legislators imply that SB 3335 will provide affordable opportunities for local business licensing. This is false, and the Massachusetts legalization bill with overregulation costs only allows for the wealthy to afford licensing. This is true of Massachusetts, with most of the cannabis operations owned by big companies. We ask that the legislation scrap this legalization bill and support and reinvent a medical program which is in chaos with federal raids and mismanagement by the Department of Health and treating the medical patients of Hawaii like criminals. As a cannabis advocate, there's absolutely no reason to legalize right now. Instead, we ask the legalization to work with citizens of Hawaii, many of whom I've talked to and support medical cannabis, to build a resilient medical program that creates safe communities. The state of Maine has been the best medical program in the world. We ask that our local law enforcement and Attorney General have conversations with Maine law enforcers to understand its success. Maine's medical program is now so successful they don't even use law enforcement to enforce it. Instead, law enforcement ensures that medical patients are protected from the criminal market. Maine's only actual mistake was bringing legalization to their state, which has compounded more black market problems and the medical cannabis model, local business losing money. Big business and political lobbying brought in legalization. The state didn't need legalization. Our organization is now engaging with church groups, drug awareness programs, and law enforcement across the state to introduce a bill next year for a thriving medical program that will bring both pro and anti-cannabis people alike together to build healthy and responsible cannabis communities across Hawaii. We must
Mr.
protect
Hanley,
our
can you
keiki.
start wrapping up, please?
Yep, I'm wrapping up. I'm almost done. We must protect our keiki from money-hungry monopolies and criminal markets looking to make a quick buck on our families through a legalization bill. There is no need to scare our communities that the world is ending with cannabis, but educate them of the positive medical benefits of cannabis for Ohana struggling with medical problems. Thank you very much. Aloha.
Thank you. David Nathan, Doctors for Drug Policy Reform.
Thank you and good afternoon, Chair Nakashima and members. I am a psychiatrist, educator, father of two, and co-founder and past president of the international organization Doctors for Drug Policy Reform, which is a proud member of the Hawaii Alliance for Cannabis Regulation, and we support a core set of regulatory principles for cannabis rooted in public health. We strongly support SB 3335 with an amendment that would empower Hawaii to adopt a cannabis product symbol approved by a nationally regulated standards organization. While I'm happy to address the concerns of legalization opponents, their cherry-picked data and hyperbolic claims go against the data, which is clear. Prohibition does not reduce cannabis use, and legalization does not increase underage use rates or the rates of schizophrenia. Only under a legalized framework can cannabis be properly regulated to protect public health through evidence-based warnings and testing of products. While I'm happy to answer questions on any aspect of legalization from the medical perspective, I want to make sure that we discuss proper labeling of cannabis products. The International Intoxicating Cannabinoid Product Symbol was developed and approved as a standard by D4DPR in collaboration with one of the world's largest consensus standard organizations, ASTM International. The IICPS has been adopted in 4 states, Montana, South Dakota, New Jersey, and Vermont, and more states are coming online. In my written testimony, I've attached an infographic that describes the IICPS in detail. I also attached a letter signed by 22 organizations representing industry, physicians, patients, and consumers, essentially all major cannabis stakeholders, supporting the adoption of IICPS by all regulatory authorities in the United States. The National Technology and Transfer and Advancement Act mandates federal use of consensus standards whenever possible. That means the IICPS is poised to become the national cannabis product symbol when cannabis is legalized at the federal level. And that is why I urge you to approve SB 3335 with amended language that broadly empowers the Aloha State to adopt a cannabis product symbol approved by a nationally recognized consensus standard organization. I thank you for your time, and I'll stand by for questions.
Thank you. Next, Karen O'Keefe, Marijuana Policy Project on Zoom.
Aloha, my name is Karen O'Keefe. I am an attorney who has worked on cannabis policy for 20 years at the nonprofit Marijuana Policy Project. I urge you to pass SB 3335 with the amendments that are requested in the Hawaii Alliance for Cannabis Reform's testimony. 58% of Hawaii voters support legalizing and regulating cannabis, and for good reason. While cannabis isn't risk-free, it is far safer than alcohol, tobacco, and many medications. Adults shouldn't be punished for making the safer choice. I would like to respond to some claims that opponents have made. Many claims are premised on the idea that youth cannabis will increase post-legalization. But as the National Institute on Drug Abuse Director Nora Volkow testified to the U.S. Senate in 2022, to quote, legalization by some states of marijuana has not been associated with an increase in adults' marijuana use, end quote. Since then, new CDC data has come out and it has shown that teen use actually decreased in legalization states, almost every legalization state since legalization. Opponents also suggest that psychosis will increase. However, a study published in the Journal of the American Medical Association found, quote, compared with no legalization policy, states with legalization policies experienced no statistically significant increase of psychosis-related diagnosis or prescribed antipsychotics. Next, Honolulu's prosecutor claimed, quote, Japanese tourists will stop coming to Hawaii. In reality, California's tourism data shows that trips from Japan went up, not down, after the state legalized. Also, most tourism to Hawaii is from the U.S. mainland, where cannabis legalization enjoys 70% support, or Canada, where it's legal nationwide. Also, contrary to claims that legalization harms road safety, there was an overall decrease in road fatalities if you compare each legal state's pre-legalization federal FARS data to the 2019 FARS data, which is the last year before COVID changed driving patterns. Next, opponents have claimed that the illicit market increases post-legalization. That's total nonsense. A survey found that only 6% of cannabis consumers in legal states buy from dealers. Even people that live in prohibition states, without medical use or adult use legalization, 29% of those consumers report buying cannabis from brick and mortar stores because they travel to legal states.
Your 2 minutes are up. If I can ask you to wrap up.
Yes, legalization and regulation is good policy. It increases freedom, reduces hypocrisy, generates tax revenue, and allows for health and safety regulations. Mahalo.
Thank you very much. Amy Detweiler, Hawaii Federation of Republican Women.
Aloha, Chair Nakashima and members of the committee. Thank you for this opportunity to testify. The Federation stands in strong opposition to SB 3335. While I support the use of medical cannabis, I do not support the use of recreational cannabis. And I think that's critical right there to emphasize that point. I stand on my written testimony, which covers two areas of concern. One is the danger to the community, which has been expressed by our law enforcement directors and administrators. So I'll leave you to read the data that I put into my written testimony. The other area is health and wellness. There was a significant rate increase in marijuana-related emergency department visits in the state of Colorado. Now, exposure over the past 10 years where this has been enacted into law there's been an increase in calls and visits to the emergency room. Additionally, previous testifiers noted the increased, the strength of the marijuana. It's a lot more than it was many years ago. There's just so many dangers involved. And I want to leave you with this personal story. A very good friend of mine and her husband sent their son to Colorado State University several years ago. He, like many other students, were in the dorm system, and he had no idea, and neither did his parents know about the law in Colorado to legalize recreational marijuana. He endured painfully his roommate smoking marijuana almost every night. And when this student, my friend's son, expressed it to the dorm advisor's hands were tied because of the laws in Colorado. Just imagine your child or your grandchild having to endure this during their first semester of college away from home, feeling helpless, unable to get another room, and to ensure that that new roommate would not smoke marijuana. I mean, I'm just trying to bring it down to the nuts and bolts where the rubber meets the road. As a mom
excuse me,
and a
your 2
grandmother,
minutes are up.
Thank
Can I
you,
ask
sir.
you to start wrapping up?
Please vote no on SB 3335, as this is going to impact our families and future generations to come. Mahalo.
Next, Jeffrey Hong, Tecmana LLC.
Aloha, Chair Nakashima and members of the committee. My name is Jeff Hong. I'm the CEO of Tecmana, a software and cybersecurity company. I have the additional perspectives of the board chair of Hawaiian Ethos, a medical cannabis licensee, and I serve as chair of the Honolulu Liquor Commission, where we are responsible for enforcing liquor laws. I speak in a personal capacity in strong support. Last week, I listened to hours of tragic stories of people being incarcerated and harmed by drugs. While many testified in opposition, all are examples of the failure of cannabis regulations through our criminal code. My written testimony highlights the historical failures of prohibition, the rise of organized crime, increased costs of enforcement and incarceration, serving to minors, poisoning through adulterated products. They all sound familiar. Strict regulation and criminal statute to discourage irresponsible behavior was the solution for alcohol. I would guess that most of the tragic stories of addiction contain an alcohol element. Our cannabis policy opened our keiki to a gateway of marketplace criminality. I encourage you to view cannabis through the eyes of a liquor regulator. At a liquor store or a dispensary, check for IDs and have tested safe products. You will not be offered a side of meth. During Prohibition, people would go blind from poorly manufactured gin. There is no fentanyl in dispensary products. The potency is well measured in dispensaries. In liquor stores, you know when you're buying bourbon and when you're purchasing a wine cooler. I agree with the Kauai prosecutor. It is better to have safe dispensaries rather than our citizens and visitors looking for drugs on the beach. Legalization drove out bootleggers and moonshiners. I cannot remember the last time someone was arrested for these crimes. Prohibition does not work. We need to learn from our historical past. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you very much. Gerald Bush, Hawaii Psychiatric Medical Association.
Good afternoon, Chair Nakashima and members of the committee. I'm Gerald Bush. Last year, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Administration interviewed people in the state of Hawaii and found that 14% of the population had used cannabis in the last year. The question is it really necessary to change this law for such a small percentage of the population? What about public safety? This bill to legalize recreational marijuana improves public safety about as much as throwing a few bars of soap onto the floor of your shower. There's plenty of evidence from states that have legalized recreational marijuana to show that it's not safe by any means. Marijuana is not a harmless substance. Despite popular misconceptions, the research consistently demonstrates the adverse effects. Regular marijuana use has been linked to cognitive impairment, mental health disorders such as psychosis and schizophrenia. Legalization would lead to commercial availability and accessibility of marijuana, potentially exacerbating these health risks. I see these cases every day in the Queens Medical Center psychiatric emergency room. I see them on the children's unit, the psychiatric unit at Queens Hospital, and I see them in the pretrial detainees who've been using cannabis at OCCC. Legalizing marijuana sends the wrong message about substance abuse, particularly to our youth. By normalizing marijuana consumption, we risk undermining efforts to prevent drug abuse and promote healthy lifestyles. The last thing we need is to create a culture where using mind-altering substances is viewed as socially acceptable or even desirable. Finally, we must consider the unique cultural and environmental significance of our state. Legalizing marijuana would have profound implications for our island communities, from altering the fabric to potentially disrupting delicate ecosystems if large-scale cultivation were to take hold.
Mr.
We
Bush,
must
if I can
carefully
ask
weigh
you to
these
please start
considerations
wrapping up.
against the potential benefits of legalization. Thank you for allowing my testimony today.
Thank you. Fifth in auto, Akamai Cannabis Consulting. Casey Rothstein, Green Aloha Limited.
Aloha chairs and committee members, thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. My name is Casey Rothstein. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Green Aloha. We're the state medical dispensary license for the island of Kauai. I'm also a longtime medical patient and a parent of 3 teenage daughters. I am in strong support of SB 3335. There is and has long been a flourishing recreational cannabis market in Hawaii. This market is completely in the hands of the illicit market, which does not ID their customers, does not mind selling to minors. These sales are unregulated, untested, and untaxed, and they occur outside of a controlled, regulated environment. The overwhelming majority of this cannabis is not grown in Hawaii, but shipped in from the mainland. By creating a well-regulated adult use industry, we can ensure product safety through testing, keep it out of the hands of keiki through strict ID requirements and educational programs. The bill will create a legal industry for small farmers and legacy growers here in Hawaii to ensure that the cannabis sold in Hawaii is grown and tested in Hawaii. The industry will also create a much-needed tax stream for the state that is currently not being collected. Estimates show that a mature industry in Hawaii could generate upwards of $100 million per year in new taxes for the state without raising taxes on residents and businesses. There are almost 500,000 deaths annually associated with tobacco and almost 200,000 associated with alcohol in the U.S. alone. Yet we as a society have decided as a matter of individual freedom and choice to regulate these industries rather than prohibit and criminalize them. People should have the freedom to choose cannabis over these far more dangerous substances, and they should be able to obtain it via a safe, regulated market where they don't have to feel like criminals to purchase it. SB 3335 is a careful and conservative approach to creating a legal adult use cannabis industry in Hawaii. I urge you to be on the right side of history and pass this bill. I'm here for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Tida Yamaki, Retail Merchants of Hawaii on Zoom. Lea Kaolakakua, Pakalolo for the people.
Aloha, chairs and committee members. My name is Leah Kikaulua in strong support of SB 3335. Whether we call it medical or recreational, tested and regulated products that are subject to quality control standards encourage safe and responsible cannabis use. This is an opportunity to establish a healthy, legal industry that fosters community engagement and education around cannabis use, while promoting dialogue and understanding about responsible consumption to prevent potential risk. By putting an end to cannabis prohibition, Hawaii will generate significant tax revenue. For example, close to $40 million year one and over $100 million in program maturity, create valuable jobs for our locals, and set forward a safe and legal framework for current operators to step out of illicit operations. We can do this right. It starts with legalizing adult use now. Thank you.
I'm ready to go. Thank you very much. Cynthia Ao, American Cancer Society Cancer Action Network.
Hello. Hello, Chair Nakashima and committee members. Cynthia Ao on behalf of the American Cancer Society Cancer Action Network, or ACS-CAN. ACS-CAN opposes, urge clarification, and offer amendments on SB 3335 SD2 HD1. We oppose smoking or the aerosolization of any form of cannabis. We urge clarification on whether smoking, including the use of e-cigarettes, of any and all cannabis or cannabis-derived products, including whether they are natural or synthetic, is prohibited in all workplaces and public places. This includes prohibiting indoor smoking associated with permits for special events and social consumption. ACS-CAN recommends an amendment to broaden the definition of smoking found in our written testimony. We oppose the changes to the e-liquid definition to cannabis products, or cannabis accessories. ACS-CAN remains concerned about reducing smoking, including the use of e-cigarettes, and reducing exposure to secondhand smoke. Expanding the use of cannabis only heightens these concerns, and we encourage the legislature to ensure that cannabis laws do not undermine effective tobacco control laws and further health disparities. We urge the state to be required to collect baseline data and monitor the ongoing impact of cannabis on the use of tobacco or other substances, including alcohol, opioids, and tracking psychosis and other behavioral health conditions. We also urge the state to be required to collect data on how engaging disproportionately impacted areas in the cannabis industry impacts health equity, including the impact of cannabis use, sales, and all cannabis business locations in these areas, as well as ensure equitable enforcement. In the bill, you require reports on incidences, but we should also look at how it impacts the health and quality of Hawaii. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you very much. Godfrey Lawrence, Reason Foundation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Jeffrey Lawrence. I'm the research director at the Reason Foundation, which is a libertarian think tank that provides technical advice on this and other issues across the country. I also submitted written comments, but I wanted to call attention to a handful of items. There have been, certainly some states have been more effective than others in displacing the illicit market with the legal market. I should start out by saying that all 50 states have an adult use recreational cannabis market. It's just that only in half of them is that market legal and regulated. And the other half, it is unlicensed and unregulated. So in those states like Michigan, I think is a great example of a state that has been successful in displacing illicit activity and replacing it with legal activity. Other states like New York and California have had some well-documented errors and difficulties in doing that. I think there's been a clear trend among the states that have been successful is that the states that allow that reduce the barriers to entry to get into the market and control the cost for consumers are going to be the most successful in transitioning both producers and consumers over to the legal market. California has been well documented as having legal market only capturing about a third of the demand. Part of the reason, there are really two reasons for that. One is the total tax burden assessed at both the state and local level can account for up to 40% of the retail price of goods. Second is that local governments are permitted to ban retail sales. And there are parts of the state where you can be more than 100 miles from the closest legal seller. So in these kind of cannabis desert areas, it is an access issue, even for consumers who wish to buy legal products. In 2022, there was a study in the Journal of Alcohol and Drug Abuse that polled 50,000 respondents, and 12,000 of those lived in were cannabis consumers who lived in areas that had legal sales available, or at least in jurisdictions, and had indicated that they had still purchased from illegal sources over the past year. Number one and two reasons given
Can I
was—
ask you to start wrapping up?
Sure. Lack of access and the high price relative to what's available on the illicit market. We have a couple of concerns with this bill, primarily the license caps that are alluded to in sections A13 sub 6, section A75 sub B. We think there needs to be a competitive marketplace in order to hold down costs for consumers. Also, the canopy restrictions that are in section A112 sub B or sub D. 5,000 square feet of allowable canopy space is insufficient to realize economies of scale.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Randy Gantz, Hawaii Cannabis Industry Solutions. Okay, thank you very much. Nicholas Leverance, Drug Policy Forum of Hawaii.
Aloha, Chair, members. Nikos Leverins with the Drug Policy Forum of Hawaii. I just wanted to say that the recent experience of New Mexico demonstrates that a relatively smaller state, even one with a much more expansive geography, can effectively online an adult use system with relatively minimal costs. I believe it was $3.5 million each year for the first 3 years. And in its first full year of operation, they saw $300 million in gross sales and $27 million in tax revenue. So it can be done. For good, I want to quote from Justice Brandeis here. In a famous dissent, he wrote, "Our government is the potent, the omnipresent teacher. For good or ill, it teaches the whole people by example." What we have here is a cannabis prohibition regime that is very effective in what it is intended to do. It compounds the harm of extensive involvement in the criminal legal system by Native Hawaiian communities, and in the context of cannabis, by the Filipino community. According to data from the latest Uniform Crime Report, from 2011 to 2020, 7,457 adults were arrested on cannabis possession charges, and 3,817 juvenile arrests. In the latest year of those juvenile arrests, 3/4 of those were non-white children, mainly Native Hawaiian and Filipino. So, for all of the rigmarole the criminal legal lobby makes, whether it includes moderate politicians and even our medical community, they refuse to acknowledge to this day the harms of criminalization, even the criminalization of our children. Criminalization does not further their health and well-being. Putting them in a coercive environment does not further their health and well-being. And I would say, to sum up, that continued misrepresentation of the risks associated with cannabis by government erodes trust and confidence in the integrity of our governmental institutions. And that's especially the case amongst our young people. Mahalo.
Thank you very much. Gail Byrne Barber, Hawaii Hemp Farmers Association on Zoom. Okay. We can come back to her later. Governor Lingo.
Chair Nakashima and committee members, I'm speaking today as an individual as well as a former governor of the state of Hawaii. This is the first time I've testified at the legislature in the 14 years since I've left office, and it's because I feel so strongly against this Senate bill for a variety of reasons. You've heard many of them today, but I want to focus on something specific in the bill that I haven't heard mentioned, and I want to draw the public's attention to it, and that is congregating marijuana stores in the poorest neighborhoods. In fact, this bill gives preference to poor people, to poor communities. It gives grants to poor people to open marijuana stores. It gives grants to nonprofits in areas of poverty to open marijuana stores to then turn around and help the people that marijuana has hurt. Can you imagine if the public knew that you were giving grant money to open a liquor store in a poor neighborhood? So why give money to open a marijuana store in the poorest areas? It's not just a poor area, it's areas of persistent poverty. Also in this bill, under the section regarding signage of where you can advertise marijuana stores, you cannot advertise within 750 feet of public housing. You can advertise near an apartment building, a condominium, a townhouse, any other domicile except public housing. Why would that be true? Because everyone knows that a bill like this that legalizes a drug like this hurts the poor the most. And they don't want that kind of signage near public housing where people who are struggling to make it, to survive, are going to be influenced by it. So for that reason, I think this is a very dangerous bill, and you would end up congregating these kinds of stores in poorer neighborhoods. And finally, to the people who want to raise how many states have passed this and how it's all been good in other states, keep in mind, our state is one of only 2 that has never legalized gambling of any form. I've been in office since going back to 1980, when I was on the county council on Maui, 8 years as mayor, 8 years as governor. Gambling comes up over and over and over again. Why doesn't the legislature pass it eventually? Because they know the impact would be severe on those in the poorest communities, those who are struggling to make it. So I say if we're an outlier and we're one of the states that doesn't legalize recreational marijuana, good for us. I think that makes us a better state. Thank you for hearing me today.
Thank you very much. Margaret Lim, in opposition.
Good afternoon, chairs and members of the committee. I raised my son. My name is Margaret Lim. I'm a concerned mother. I raised my son in church and private schools, and he started using marijuana in his senior year. Now, 12 years later, he continues to numb himself with drugs and other substances. He is unable to function in our society. Marijuana did not do anything good to him. Medically, socially, relationally, physically. He is depressed, anxious, and lazy. It has ripped apart our family relationships. He also recently got into a major car accident. At one point, he was homeless. If our state cannot control our current crime, violence, and homeless problem, how can they control the massive and serious problems which will be ushered in by legalizing commercial marijuana? Since medical marijuana is already legalized, there is no need to legalize recreational marijuana. We should focus on making Hawaii a safer, cleaner place for business to thrive and for our tourists to keep coming back. The revenue projected to come in from passing this bad bill would not be enough to compensate ruined relationships, families destroyed, cost of needing more law enforcement officers, more prison cells, legal fees, and other social needs. Finally, I have one question for all of you. Would you be happy to see your spouse or children or nephews or nieces using marijuana and become addicted? If not, please do not pass this bill. Thank Thank you.
Justin Paiva.
Aloha Chair and committee members. My name is Justin Paiva. I'm from the District of Puna on the Big Island. I stand in strong support of SB 3335. SB 3335, excuse me. SB 3335 is a lifeline for our residents. Like a dear friend who surpassed her life expectancy, battling cancer, as well as many other residents in the state of Hawaii that use cannabis to tend to and or complement their ongoing treatment. SB 3335 opens the power of this plan to our residents of Hawaii, not just the privileged few that can qualify for the Hawaii Medical Cannabis Card. With 80% voter support, it regulates and taxes the industry, virtually eradicates the black market, and generates close to $40 million annually. As the market matures, projections show that the market will go to more than $100 million. Regulatory inaction risks public safety. SB 3335 streamlines operations, promotes safety for our communities and our keiki. It creates jobs while aligning with the potential federal changes, guiding us towards a future of compassion. We must dispel the outdated ideology of reefer madness. We must move beyond the fear and misinformation to embrace evidence-based policies. Champion SB 3335, be the architects of change, forge a path towards a brighter, inclusive tomorrow for all Hawaii residents. Mahalo for your time.
Thank you. David Pitt.
Aloha, Chair. Committee members, my name is David Pitt. I'm here all the way from Big Island today to express my unwavering support for SB 3335. As a father, caregiver, patient, and cannabis professional with years of experience spanning multiple states, I have witnessed the inner workings of cannabis regulation at every level. Through my diverse exposure, I've come to intimately understand how regulated and organized adult access directly benefits our communities. This modern regulatory framework fosters safe commerce that would otherwise be driven to a dangerously unregulated place in the vacuum created by severely limited medical markets or unchecked caregiver programs. Working in the cannabis industry has also provided a way for me to support my family, allowing me to bring them back to Hawaii. The jobs and opportunities that are created within this industry will afford Hawaii's talented workforce the opportunity to support themselves and their families. Hawaii's abandoning workforce can be motivated to stay or return home to pursue their passions. We do Hawaii's patients and cannabis industry professionals a grave injustice when we make them feel persecuted or unsupported for the way they choose to financially support their families. I implore the committee to pass SB 3335. This bill would guarantee public safety while generating revenue for the state that is otherwise currently funding illicit entities in our home. Thank you.
Thank you. Laura Nakanelua on Zoom. Ryan Lim in person. Cynthia Bartlett in person.
Thank you, Chair. We've heard a lot of arguments about prohibition, which is a really hollow argument. Or you could take any edge of society and say we're making a prohibition against that. And it's like using the term health equity. It's just a slogan that can be misused in any direction. As a parent, I have an autistic daughter where her psychiatrist and neurologists informed me that she should not have the medical marijuana before the age of 25. Why is that? It's because the adolescent brain, as this gentleman said, is still developing until the age of 25. And that's your prefrontal cortex. That's where your IQ can grow for life. And if we allow 18-year-olds to unfettered access, and you know they'll be excited and they will do it, you've changed their brain forever, developing between the age of 18 and 25, and you can't reverse that. So you have to consider the risk versus benefits. There's no better, a more knowledgeable group than ASAM, which has a chapter here in Hawaii. It's the American Society of Addiction Medicine. Their latest policy was in 2020. And I spoke to, we emailed actually William Hanning, Dr. William Hanning, who is currently president of ASAM, board of direction, and still a regent at UH. And he said he stands by the same position paper that cannabis has been shown to be associated with cognitive decline, impaired educational, occupation attainment, and risk of other substance abuse. It has been associated with disability. Use of cannabis has associated with increased problems, anxiety disorder, depression, psychosis, and psychiatric comorbidities. And as the other gentleman said, when I was in college, I tried cannabis. It was around 4% in those days. Today, our people are experiencing 12 to 17 to 23%, with those concentrates being up above 75%. If you're worried about psychosis and schizophrenia, depression, anxiety, and all these things that will cause more problems in Hawaii, legalizing this and pretending that it's erasing a prohibition is just going to cause Hawaii more
Ms.
harm.
Bartlett, may I ask you to start wrapping up?
Thank you.
Okay. Going back to Gail Barber, available on Zoom.
Yeah, aloha, Chair. Thank you, and committee members. Gail Byrne-Baber with Hawaii Hemp Farmers Association. We submitted testimony in the beginning of the session, a lot of data and information on why we didn't want hemp in this bill. We're still very concerned about hemp. We've worked with the Attorney General to try to mitigate it. It is our preference still that hemp be pulled out of this bill for a lot of the reasons that we've already elaborated on. One of them being the regulatory flux that this and uncertainty that this provides to the hemp industry. And in fact, just as we were warned by experts, including Bo Whitney, national hemp and cannabis economist, and probably collects more data than anyone, collects data on the CANRA policies that CANRA itself does not collect data on, upon which this regulatory framework is based, warned that combining hemp with cannabis would result in impacts to our industry, and it has twofold already, just because of the existence of this bill, and I'll tell you how. First is investment was with and drawn from a very important fuel project on Oahu. The investor was watching. We thought everything was fixed with HB 1359 last year and Acts 263. Investors are watching Hawaii, just like investors watch the regulatory environment in any sector in which they're invested, saw that it was in flux again, and then made the determination last month to withdraw from a hemp project that was going to bring in $35 million per year to Hawaii. So this bill has already impacted that. Secondly, a large landowner in the state that was open to a hemp fiber project has now withdrawn from that too, because again, the mingling of federally illicit crop with hemp, which is a USDA-approved crop, just creates too much anxiety, quite frankly, with a lot of folks. And as we've seen in other states, we end up in the loss of business services to hemp farmers, including insurance and banking, et cetera. And that's just all fact. We provided a lot of experts on that. The AG decided that, they're not going to pull hemp out of this. So the bill being over 400 pages now, we haven't had the time to determine, as the bill keeps changing, whether all the potential mitigating factors in there for hemp are in there.
Can I ask you to please start wrapping up?
Yeah, sure. So we'll get back to you folks and the legislature, and thank you for your time. I think people do care about hemp, but again, this bill is not good for hemp. Regardless of what people are saying, the facts and the experts are on the hemp industry side with regards to this one, but appreciate your help. Aloha.
Thank you. Craig Pollard.
Aloha, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Dr. Craig Pollard, and I strongly support SB 3335. As a pharmacist in this community for many years, I've been entrusted with dispensing medications to our people. There are many safeguards in place in pharmacies to protect the public, such as child-resistant packaging, proper labeling, and ensuring the medication came from a trusted, legitimate source. Identical safeguards can be found in this bill, all designed to protect the public. Currently, on every island in our state, due to the lack of a regulated market, illicit cannabis products can be found easily that are untested, incorrectly dosed, mimic items appealing to children, and potentially contain dangerous cutting agents, additives, or contaminants. The lack of a regulated market in Hawaii is forcing responsible adults to resort to purchasing these types of potentially adulterated products. I urge you to vote in support of SB 3335 to protect Hawaii's responsible adult cannabis consumers. Thank you.
Thank you, David Corona.
Chair of Committee Meetings, thank you for taking my time to hear what I have to say. I've got my book over there, and I sat there, and for days now, I've been thinking about what I want to come up here and say, different than what I said last committee meeting. I exposed myself pretty much out there to everybody, things that people don't know about me. But and so in doing so, it let me reflect back a little bit about myself. And I sat up here today, and I listened to all the supporters and those that are opposing it. And by the way, I do oppose the bill. But you know, there's nothing more that I can say that what hasn't already been said about those who support and those who do not support. But I ask you, you're the committee. You are going to take a vote on this. You're going to make a decision. And I had to sit back and reflect. I've participated in other committees or other testified and such, but a lot of times I go into these things and I say they've already got their minds made up. It's just a check in the box at the committee. What else is there to do? They're just there to listen, get it out of the way, and then they're going to vote because they already know what they're going to vote about or what they're going to vote on. So I'm asking you now, what can I do as a community member? I'm just a simple guy who lives out in Waianae. That's what I do. I just live my life. What can I do to help you change your mind and oppose this at the committee right now? Because I do not know what else to do. I hear our law enforcement, our prosecuting attorneys, even the Attorney General in their report said they do not support the legalization of it. In their report, I don't know what else to do. This is a bad bill, but I do support medical marijuana. I think that's a good thing. I think we need to get that worked out. But I look to you, I need you to tell me what I need to do to change your minds. That's all I'm asking, because there's nothing else I can say, there's nothing else I can do, there's no way else I can expose myself other than ask you, what else can I do to help you change your mind before you make this vote today? That's all I have to say. That's a tough question. Thank you.
Jen Flanagan on Zoom.
Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, thank you for allowing me to testify before you today in favor of Senate Bill 3335. My name is Jennifer Flanagan. I am a former Massachusetts Cannabis Control Commissioner holding the public health seat appointed by the governor, a former state senator and state representative in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. As one of the 5 inaugural commissioners, it was our responsibility to create the regulatory agency and stand up the legalized cannabis market, while at the same time ensuring that our taxpayer dollars were spent efficiently. Originally, I voted against cannabis legalization in Massachusetts. However, through my work at the commission, I now understand the importance of a legalized and regulated market and its value to the state's economy. I commend Hawaii on its due diligence in exploring legalized cannabis and providing policies and programs that allow regulators to be nimble in their work and create rules that fit with your state. Reasonable policies and programs will lead to greater business participation and implementation moving forward. We worked hard in Massachusetts to strike the right balance between statutory requirement and regulatory opportunity. Hawaii is in a unique position to implement the adult use program within the Office of Cannabis Control at the onset, utilizing existing resources and staff availability. I wish we had this available to us in Massachusetts during the early days of our adult use legalization, as it would have provided greater efficiencies while we drafted initial rules and created our programming. However, with available resources and staff, Hawaii will be able to implement an effective program with a relatively low initial cost and the expertise of staff currently operating the medical program. The legalization of adult use cannabis can be an opportunity to provide safe, tested products for consumers, revenue collection for the state, and additional funding for many of the programs that residents rely on. Thank you for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Wendy Gibson, Vivian, on Zoom. Marco Medeiros.
Aloha, Chair and committee members. Thank you for the opportunity to testify in strong support of SB 3335. My name is Michael Medeiros. I am native Hawaiian raised in Hilo. I have lived in California and Colorado and seen the positive benefits that cannabis can have on a community. Cannabis has had such a positive impact on my life. It helped me when I didn't want to rely on opiates for pain relief, and still to this day helps me cope with regular pain. I firmly believe that every adult deserves the right to decide whether they can use cannabis without fear of judgment or imprisonment. In addition to personal benefits, the measure would establish a tax revenue stream for the state that has the potential to generate $40 million now and $100 million when it matures. Cannabis is already being bought and sold in the islands through underground transactions. This bill will address this by regulating and taxing the cannabis industry. This measure provides for strong enforcement that would reduce risks of illicit sales and exposure for Hawaii's keikis and the public. Mahalo.
Thank you very much. Marianne Quiros, in person.
Aloha Chair, aloha representatives. My name is Marianne Quiros, and I am in strong support of Bill SB 335. As a cannabis consumer and industry professional, I've seen the industry grow at our state as well as nationally, and I feel that Hawaii would benefit widely with the passing of this bill. On a daily basis, I encounter many folks, from local residents to visitors, who want to purchase cannabis thinking we are a legal adult use market. Unfortunately, without a current 329 medical card, these folks are turned away. Majority of local residents I meet already partake and don't either qualify for a 329 medical card or decide to turn to the illicit market due to its easier accessibility. If Hawaii was allowed to have a legal adult use, the amount of consumers who would shop in our market would make a great significant impact on our state revenue. If passed, in the first year, tax revenue is said to be close to $40 million, with that number increasing yearly. That is a huge amount of new potential revenue for our state. Lastly, I feel if this bill passed, it would also open up new career opportunities for our local residents. As a person raised in Ka'u on the Big Island, being able to work in the industry has allowed myself and my family to be able to afford and continue to be home. With more career opportunities open for our residents, the more who will be able to also stay home. Thank you.
Thank you. Rebecca Zamora. Not present. Bill Hicks on Zoom.
Aloha, Chair Nakashima. For every legislator who has regularly taken positions in support of public health and public safety, I urge consistency. For the sake of public health and safety, do not legalize the recreational use of marijuana. The written testimony you have already received from numerous government agencies, which is well documented, is crystal clear that legalizing the recreational use of marijuana would be harmful to the public health and safety. According to the Hawaii Department of Health's extensively documented written testimony, marijuana use leads to an increase in psychotic disorders, an increase in suicidal behavior. During pregnancy, it adversely affects babies, and following birth in children, it adversely impacts brain development in young adults. It additionally poses additional safety hazards on roadways, in industrial activities, and in healthcare settings. Hawaii does not possess the infrastructure to cope with the additional strain that increased use of marijuana will clearly create. Have we lost our way? Historically, government is on the side of preventing or trying to cure drug abuse, not enabling it. Look how hard it has been to combat tobacco and alcohol abuse. Why let the genie out of the bottle and worsen marijuana abuse? Just say no to legalizing marijuana. Mahalo.
Thank you very much. Iwa Ka'apuni.
Aloha nui kako, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Hiwa Ka'apuni and I am here today from Pi'ihonua in Hilo on the island of Hawai'i. I am a cannabis professional and I am also a caregiver to a registered medical patient testifying in support of Bill 3335. Reiterating that, like alcohol prohibition, illegal cannabis does not eliminate the influence to use or actual use of the product and steers all profits to an underground market where curious buyers of any age may be easily exposed to far more dangerous drugs and drug violence. Even today's very limited but very expensive medical access still guarantees that for those whose medical conditions do not qualify, cannabis products remain untested for purity and potency, exposing the already thriving community of non-medical consumers to dangerous pesticides, molds, bacteria, and even lacing. Regulation is what will begin to reduce reliance on the illicit market and dissolve its inherited violence here in Hawaii. Regulation is what will keep your keiki safe from underage consumption of products with uncertain composition. Regulation is what will help to fund and resource substance abuse programs and improving police community and public health relations. No rules, no tax, no quality assurance, no education. That is when cannabis becomes unsafe for the public. Please help to dismantle the mountain of information on this plant. Consider passing this bill and begin to normalize the regulated adult use of cannabis so everyone may arrive to it safely if they choose to. Mahalo.
Thank you. Alan Cardines Jr.
Aloha, Chair Nakashima, members of the committee. Aloha, Rep Gates. Alan Cardenas Jr. I stand in strong opposition of this measure. I have been working out on the Waianae Coast for the last 20 years. I'm not sure if you guys have listened to the news reports in the last year alone. Homicides reports are off the charts, over 80%. Game rooms, homelessness, hopelessness, sexual exploitations, school campuses out of control, domestic violence. The list goes on and on and on. Passing this measure will only make things worse. Let me just summarize my written testimony just with the ABCs. Addiction. The stats show that number of kids, marijuana is the number one drug for adolescents in substance abuse treatment. The youngest one that I heard of is in the third grade. In the third grade, dealing with addiction. Not just addiction, but brain disorder. We're gonna legalize a powerful, mind-altering drug that causes psychosis and all these other problems that we are dealing with out there in our families, the school campuses, and the community. See crime activity. It'll be an increase of that. Last week, we had a number of young guys here testifying. Those guys are coming out of prison, going into prison, drug treatment program, and to be able to support their habits, they turn to a life of crime. D, drug driving. E, it's an economic nightmare and economic and financial nightmare. In my testimony, I put one of the stories of one of the many deaths of psychosis, mental illness, men not making the right choices and turning to other things that destroy them and their families. You got a number of other testimonies coming in from young people that we have helped over the years. I thank God that these guys were able to submit testimonies last week and today. Unfortunately, we've got a number of people that we buried. They're not here. They died because of drugs. So our community, our kids, our Hawai'i, from Kauai to Ka'u, from Hanalei to Hilo, we need more hope, not dope. Let's fix the problems that we have now before we do anything else, Chair. So what safeguards? We can't even take care of the fireworks, the homelessness, and all of that, Chair. So that's where I stand on behalf of our families and our communities. I just stand in strong position. Thank you, mahalo, for allowing me to testify. Thank you.
David Vaillancourt on Zoom.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is David Vaillancourt. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to provide some brief comments here, and specifically how evidence-based standards are a critical component of advancing the safety, manufacturing, and product quality and safety of products containing cannabinoids in the state of Hawaii. I serve as the co-founder and board chair of the S3 Collective, a nonprofit organization focused on supporting cannabis and cannabinoid marketplaces through collaboration, education, and standardization. I also serve as the elected vice chair of ASTM International's Committee D37 on Cannabis. It's there that myself, along with 800 and counting other volunteers, develop voluntary consensus standards utilizing ASTM's 125-year-old process that's accredited by ANSI as an official standards development organization adhering to the World Trade Organization's technical barriers to trade. ASTM standards are known and trusted globally to provide the safeguards needed for functional marketplaces. They range from the performance of jet fuel used in airplanes to the steel and concrete used in our infrastructure, the safety of child's toys, and much more. Grab your Sharpie or dry erase marker at home and you'll see that it conforms to an ASTM standard written right on it. In fact, over 13,000 standards from 90 different industry sectors are active today, with over 6,000 being adopted or referenced in regulations in the US and around the world. As of today, Committee D37, formed in 2017, has 54 cannabis-specific standards approved and nearly 80 more in development through this rigorous consensus voting process. With over 800 members, we have regulators, including from the great state of Hawaii and many others, academia, physicians, industry, consumers, and public health experts and agencies from over a dozen nations. These standards include a truly universal symbol for identifying consumer products containing potentially intoxicating cannabinoids, a specification for medical grade cannabis flower, testing methods, good manufacturing practices, quality management systems, supplier qualifications, packaging and labeling specifications, transportation, security, and so much more. They're being utilized by many states, including Colorado, Oklahoma, New Jersey, Michigan, and others. And so, in conclusion, whether it's a product containing cannabinoids that is derived from marijuana, hemp, or an alternative method, the need for public health and safety that does not prohibit or unnecessarily impede marketplace innovation and consumer access is critical. There's a way to legalize and regulate access to products that consumers are demanding and that have medical potential, even as concluded by the US FDA recently in their scientific review. I thank you for your time and hope to see the utilization of voluntary consensus standards to protect consumers and ensure safe access.
Thank you very much. Brian Goldstein on Zoom. Rita Kimura.
Chair, committee members, I'm Rita Kimura, and I'm just an everyday person. I'm here concerned about what's going on. I'm here this afternoon to ask you to stop this bill, which would legalize recreational marijuana. Watching almost 3 hours of oral testimonies at last week's hearing only confirmed what I felt, that this is all about the money the state of Hawaii believes it's going to reap, which is folly. Many of the supporters of this bill are also hoping to reap benefits financially from the legalization of cannabis. Sadly, not much credibility was given to the 4 county police chiefs, the mayor, the prosecutor, and numerous individuals that were here testifying. Question, if I may, what is the potential cost of setting up departments to oversee and regulate this new industry, such as the Hawaii Hemp and Cannabis Authority? And what happens if this new industry fails to generate the income you are hoping for? That causes another financial burden for the already overtaxed and struggling Hawaii resident. I would like to close with this. If you choose to support this bill, and it does pass into law, you must accept the responsibility of whatever follows. In closing, I please ask you to think about everything you have heard here today. Is it really worth it? And I ask you to oppose the passing of this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. David DeClean on Zoom. Lynn Lass Rothstein on Zoom.
Well, oh, I'm here. Okay. I'm not sure. Am I supposed to speak now?
David DeClean.
Oh, okay. My name's David DeClean. I'm a 30-year teacher in East Hawaii, and I strongly oppose it. It's very interesting listening to the testimony today, as I listened to it before, but you look at vested interest versus beating hearts. That's a clear demarcation between the speakers today. Those who have a vested interest, basically financial interest, as Rita just mentioned, versus those who look at the human cost. I want to kind of piggyback onto what Linda Lingle said about the poor. I think that was very good. She talked about the setting it up in poor neighborhoods. And I think that's true. I wanted the demographic that I want to look at is the youth. As a 30-year teacher, it's the young people that I'm most concerned about. So I've got 3 questions. The first question is, I've called a lot of offices, senators and representatives both, to ask the one overarching question, which is, marijuana is available to all adults who want it. I know I took a field trip down to Ethos and saw what they have. Anybody can get a card. In fact, the doctor will come to your house. Nothing could be easier. So pot is available to all adults. Even young people, if they have an adult sponsor, they can get it. All right, so it's available. Number 2 is the incarceration aspect of it. Dealing with law enforcement is really not there any longer. I graduated college or high school the year of Woodstock, so I know what the history of this was and how enforcement was then. But now it's nothing like that. You can have 3 grams. You can smoke legally. You can. It's really not an issue any longer. People don't get incarcerated for using of marijuana. So those 2 issues take it off the table. So that's what I asked of all the offices is, what is the reason that you're pushing this? You have medical marijuana and you have these dispensaries where you can get the 25% and then you can soup that up. And nobody gets arrested for it any longer unless you're a dealer.
Mr. DeClean, if I can ask you to please wrap up.
Oh, okay. And then young people will be harmed by marijuana legalization. So are you who are voting yes, are you prepared to accept that harm? And are any of you that are voting yes, are you willing to exchange the harm to youth with a projected revenue? And we've heard the vested interest here talk about $40 million the first year, up to $100 million that they're going to get. Is that what we're looking at? Are we looking at a dollar figure versus the harm to the young people? It's going to be a gateway drug. Are we willing to accept it? Are you willing to accept that? Those of you who vote yes. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Going back to Lynn Rothstein on Zoom.
Hello, aloha. I'm Lynn Rothstein, a 74-year-old businesswoman, artist, and past president of a large arts organization. I have used cannabis since 1969. I have never progressed to hard drugs of any kind. I use cannabis at home the same way as someone who has had a glass of wine or a beer a couple of times a week. I don't like to drink alcohol for several reasons. It's closely linked to increases in cancer occurrences and deaths. Nearly 4% of cancers diagnosed worldwide in 2020 can be attributed to alcohol consumption, according to the World Health Organization. In the United States alone, about 75,000 cancer cases and 19,000 deaths are estimated to be linked to alcohol each year. This is true for breast cancer, which I have had. Studies have shown that as little as 1 drink a day increases breast cancer risk. I abstain from cannabis when I travel. I have no withdrawal symptoms. I have heard arguments against cannabis related to potent strains currently available. These arguments are wrong, since the stronger the cannabis, the less consumed. I support this legislation. I would like to walk into a licensed shop to buy cannabis legally and know that it has been tested for adulterants, pesticides, molds, heavy metals, and potency. I have no desire to support the black market where federal, state, and local taxes aren't paid and products aren't tested. Legal, licensed dispensaries are appropriate for adults over 21. This has worked in 24 states, and opioid overdose deaths have declined in states following legalization. I believe that a robust legal market will eventually end the black market in much the same way as the end of prohibition did away with moonshiners, rum runners, and speakeasies. I urge the committee to support this legislation. Mahalo for your time.
Thank you very much. Mark Rothstein on Zoom.
Turn your sound down here.
Hello? Can you hear me? I am Mark Rothstein, a 76-year-old MD licensed in Hawaii and Ohio. I am testifying as a physician and private citizen and strongly support the passage of SB 3335. I started my medical career as a public health doctor in an underserved area in Appalachia. I was the county's coroner for 12 years. I continued to practice there for 37 years. I ran a medical practice of 40 physicians and 450 employees for 7 years while functioning as the senior vice president of a large hospital system. I cite this not to bore you with my perceived professional successes, but to contrast other fallacious testimony that using cannabis will undoubtedly lead to personal ruin. The fact is that I am also a longtime intermittent cannabis user and used it before age 25. Others have highlighted the fact that we already have a robust adult use cannabis in Hawaii. It's called the black market. Its products are not taxed, tested, or licensed. It will sell cannabis to anyone, including minors. It must be highlighted that there is no guarantee that any such unregulated cannabis is free from contaminants or from other adulterated and dangerous ingredients. The illicit market can also be a source of exposure to other illegal behavior. Legal cannabis can be used as an alternative to alcohol and illicit drugs. Substituting cannabis can reduce the use of much more dangerous drugs. In contrast to the hyperbolic and some near hysterical testimony I've heard, I believe it is time that adults of Hawaii be given the right to choose which treatment or substance is most effective and least harmful for them. Passing this legislation is an opportunity for this committee to actually protect the consumer from the untested and potential dangerous products of the black market and at the same time promote a legal tax-generating commerce.
Dr.
I
Rossi,
stand
if
by
I
my
can ask you
written
to please
testimony.
start.
Mahalo.
Thank you very much. Victor Makekau Saka, in person.
Aloha, Chair Nakashima and the rest of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify in strong support of SB 3335 on the matter of adult use cannabis legalization. The legalization of adult use cannabis presents a unique opportunity to regulate and standardize the production, distribution, and sale of cannabis products. By establishing clear guidelines and quality control measures, we can ensure that consumers have access to safe and accurately labeled products, thus mitigating the potential health risks and dangers associated with unregulated markets. Proper regulation ensures that cannabis products meet the highest quality and safety standards, protecting consumers from harmful substances and contaminants. The legalization of adult use cannabis has the potential to benefit both consumers and the economy. Legalization affirms an individual's rights to make decisions about their own bodies and lifestyles, promoting personal freedom and autonomy. By prioritizing consumer protection and implementing robust regulatory frameworks, we can create a safer, more transparent cannabis market that serves the needs of our communities. Contrary to the testimony being presented by the opposition, the legalization of cannabis has been synonymous with the following positive community benefits: economic boost, criminal justice reform, consumer safety, entrepreneurship opportunities, tax revenue allocation, reduced crime rates, as supported by the FBI's Uniform Crime Report, showing that there is no compelling basis for claims that legalizing marijuana and establishing regulated markets undermines public safety, as well as a tourism boost. But most importantly, this has to do with our personal freedoms. Legalization affirms individuals' rights to make decisions about their own bodies and lifestyles, promoting personal freedom and autonomy. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Drew Daniels, in person.
Mahalo, Chair, members of the committee. I appreciate you hearing this bill because consumer protection is at the root of legalizing adult use cannabis. My name is Drew Daniels. I'm a District 1 Hawaii Island resident, 329 card holder, and cannabis industry professional, and I support SB 3335. We've already heard many testimonies that point out the facts around legalization, and I've outlined and sourced many of these points in my written testimony. I would like to address a few other concerns that we've heard, as I believe many of them are actually going to be resolved with a legal adult use program. In regards to cannabis potency, unlike the unregulated market that offers cannabis products of uncertain origin, composition, and potency, a well-regulated adult use cannabis market provides quality assurance practices like accurate labeling and batch testing to ensure people know exactly what they're getting when they purchase cannabis. In regards to cannabis leading to harder drug use, we know that the gateway drug theory has been disproven many times. According to the National Institute of Drug Abuse, the majority of people who use marijuana do not go on to use other harder substances, unless, in fact, your dealer also sells those drugs, which won't happen in a regulated market. We know that most of Hawaii's visitors are coming from places where cannabis is already legal, and they're being turned away from the current medical program and being sent to the streets to procure cannabis. We know, according to the CDC, that adolescent use actually decreases when states legalize cannabis. According to Quartz Media, we know that crime and traffic fatalities also decrease. There was a study in 9 states, looking at 9 states, and the states that legalized it, on average, decreased by 12% the 3 years immediately after adult use marijuana legalization. By contrast, deaths increased nearly 2% over the same time in the 5 control states. In a recent paper using regression analysis, a University of Washington researcher wrote, results indicate that the legalization of marijuana, both recreational and medical, does not increase violent crime rates. In contrast, cannabis legalization could lead to a decline in violent crime.
Drew, can I ask you to start wrapping up?
Yes. So, in conclusion, with all of this information in hand, it's obvious some are more concerned with maintaining prohibition than public safety. If alcohol, a deadly addictive, violence-inducing drug, is legal and celebrated, why is cannabis, a life-changing medicinal plant, still being prohibited? In the words of Rep. Favela, we're all respectable adults here. Let us make our own choices whether we want alcohol or cannabis. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Brent Norris on Zoom. Catherine Kupuka'a in person.
Good afternoon, Chair.
If you can pull the mic down closer to your mouth. Yeah, thank you.
Good afternoon, Representative Chair Mark Nakashima. My name is Catherine Kupuka'a. My opposition to this bill is it provides no benefit to our community regarding health, welfare, and safety, but the negative impact is great. Please do the right thing and not pass this bill. Law enforcement departments from the 4 counties in the Hawaiian Islands, Honolulu prosecutor Steve Alm, are in opposition to this bill. I've heard testimonies from highly respected medical doctors, professors, speak about the individual's health, not only in adults, but especially children, will be impaired mentally as well as physically. Please, I urge you to use the wisdom and learn from other communities that now acknowledge legalization of recreational marijuana use was a huge mistake. Thank you for allowing me to voice my concern.
Thank you very much. Brian Goldstein on Zoom.
Yeah, hi, Brian Goldstein here. I just want to add a few comments to my testimony. I've been very concerned about some of the misunderstanding and misleading testimony that's been submitted by prosecuting attorney Steve Alm. Most of what he stated is just simply wrong, and I'll address them very, very quickly. Contrary to his claims that tourism will be impaired, tourism in Arizona, New Mexico, and Colorado, among other states, increased after legalization. States that, as others people have said, states that have legalized have not seen major increases in use by youth. In fact, it tends to go down. And based on a report by the New York Office of Cannabis Management, there is no evidence linking the fentanyl to the legal cannabis supply chain. And finally, in states such as Arizona and New Mexico, which are really the best analogies for what Hawaii wants to do, there has been no increase in black market activity. And the critical element to minimizing the any increases in black market activity is to allow J1 sales, which means that if, in fact, the legislature does decide to legalize recreational use, that the current licensed medical dispensaries are allowed to move into recreational use sales virtually immediately, and that will choke off any opportunity for the black market to expand into. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ted Heed on Zoom. Terry Heed on Zoom.
Okay. Aloha. I already said in my testimony, just passed this bill. I mean, 38 out of 50 states already have legalized. 24 states have recreational. This is not a perfect bill. I'd like you to pull out the hemp aspect of it. But the Drug Policy Forum made a really good point that is kind of counterpoint to what Governor Lingle said. A quality of life issue. When Nixon looked at making this illegal, and the government looked at making this illegal, they looked at who used the drug, not the drug itself. And so now all of these government officials just fall right into line with that. They keep saying, look at who uses the drug. And punitive and prohibition those have never worked. So, I just think we just ought to pass this, get on with it. I sympathize with everyone that has addiction issues, but you have to realize that is a behavior, pot doesn't cause addiction. It is not a gateway drug. There are other issues involved with addiction, and there should be enough money to educate the public once this has been moved over to its own, once the infrastructure is moved into a government, it's new government, whatever they're calling it, cannabis stuff. So thank you very much for letting me testify today, and just pass this bill and let's move on.
Thank you very much. I've come to the end of the list of testifiers who indicated that they would be present. Is there anybody else wishing to testify? You could state your name.
Hi, my name is Walter Nakashima Jr. I am a Big Island resident. I am in strong support of Bill SB 335. As a person dealing with end-stage renal disease, cannabis has saved my life. I deal with nasty side effects due to my kidneys shutting down, and cannabis keeps that all in a controlled and comfortable manner. Although it is medically legal in Hawaii, I feel like everyone should have access to clean, tested cannabis and not have to be subject to going to the illicit market where it is dangerous and not tested. Cannabis has also given me a career path that I would have never seen for myself. It gave me a sense of purpose. It also gave me the opportunity to stay here in Hawaii where I am born and raised and I love. If legalized for adult usage, it will open job opportunities and career paths for those alike. I'm tired of seeing my friends and classmates moving away because of the job market. I strongly urge the passing of Bill SB 3335 because, as you can see, cannabis can change the lives for the better. Mahalo.
Thank you very much. Any other persons wishing to testify?
Aloha, Chair Nakashima, committee members, Carrie Ann Chirota on behalf of the ACLU of Hawaii. We strongly support this measure with the amendments proposed and detailed in our written testimony. But I just would like to address this issue of public safety. I think all of us are here because we care about our community on every single island, and especially our keiki and kupuna. But in the name of public safety, we have been having prohibitionist policies as well as decriminalization that continues to arrest people. It's a fact, if you look at the Attorney General's report, that over 500 people as of 2020 were still arrested for cannabis, not to mention the lifetime consequences of an arrest and conviction record. And let's be clear, who's being incarcerated or arrested in the past? Native Hawaiians, Pacific Islanders, people who are living in poverty. I would rather have in a community some opportunities for economic development than rounding up under-resourced communities and putting them in our jails and prisons where they don't get treatment, where they have less access to jobs, separated from families, and then transferred to private prisons in the name of public safety. So let's reimagine public safety. Let's recognize the fact that our youth and kupuna, which is one of the largest growing demographic that's using cannabis, instead of because of fears being addicted to opiates, wanting to use it for pain or for insomnia. Let's not criminalize them. Let's tax, regulate, test, and educate. I want to point out that in our bill, Specifically, it addresses a numerous health and safety protections that are not available in our current illicit market. Legalization is the only way to control for things by having lab testing, potency labels, childproof packaging that is non-existent in our current illicit market. There are at least 12 consumer protection measures. I want to point out, restricting adult use cannabis packaging. Packaging must be opaque, certified, child-resistant, resealable. Prohibiting packaging that initiates or resembles any existing branding consumer products. Prohibiting edibles that resemble candy or other products marketed for children. This list goes on. There are consumer protections in it, and I want to add, as a mother and as an auntie from a number of keiki, if my child at some point in time who's 12 decides to experiment with cannabis, I would want it to know that it was tested and regulated. Let's get money from this endeavor and let's put it into public education and address poverty in under-resourced communities. That is a way to reimagine public safety. Mahalo.
Thank you very much. Can I get your name again?
Carrie Ann Shirota.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Rep. Sorry about that.
Anyone else wishing to testify? Seeing none, we will. Oh.
Thank you. Aloha, guys. My name is Joseph Paul Kalekawaiva Kim. With the current bill being posted, we have heightened concern for our keiki. That they may inadvertently consume marijuana in a form of fruit roll-up or any types of gummy bears or laced with high potency of marijuana. Also, these marijuana products are packed adversely and appear as though they are, original versions, only with the leaf logo, just showing that it has marijuana on it. But, studies show kids suffered really from ingesting this illegally potent and addictive substance. Recreational marijuana markets itself as an appealing drug to our keiki through sweet candies, and the likes thus create lifelong consumer, just targeting our young kids to be consumers of this. And it feels the demands and perpetuate further dysfunctions in families and society. We had enough loss in my family alone due to this, even legalized or not. I'm just here as a father protecting my children, generations. I'll leave you guys with that. Aloha.
Thank you very much. Representative?
Aloha members, PM Mazinga, Chair, and honorable members. Marijuana can affect the brain development, leading to problems of learning, memory, coordination, reaction, and judgment. And excessive use of marijuana is associated with hallucinations, paranoia, and a range of emotional problems. But speaking on a personal basis, I'm a local girl. I graduated from Radford, and I remember during the time that I attended Radford, on the west side, somebody dropped methamphetamine in the water system, and every available ambulance on the island had to go and intervene in that particular situation. It was one of the most horrifying. Parents that even at Radford were coming to the school and trying to get their children because they were afraid of this happening in other places and all that kind of stuff. We project that this is going to be a money-generating entity. We have several other things that we can do to stimulate our economy, specifically ginseng. A pound of ginseng actually profits or yields more than a pound of cocaine or marijuana. A pound of ginseng sometimes can yield as much as $750,000. There are other things that we can do. God has blessed us with a very fertile environment. We can grow anything, even in the air, not even in the soil. So I think that we should challenge ourselves for those individuals who are really trying to make money and really stimulate the economy. There are other things that you can make much more money off of than the legalization of marijuana. Can I get an amen?
Excuse me, can I get your name?
PM Azinga, District 30. Mahalo and aloha.
Thank you very much.
Chair,
Representative.
members, I know this is going to be boring for you, but it'll be repetitive from myself, but maybe new for some others. Actually, I came here to give my regards to Governor Lingle and Prosecutor Alm. Thank you guys for being here. It's very, very meaningful. As some of you remember, my speech on the floor was saying, hey, not everybody's for marijuana, and I know the good representative from the west side, we kind of went back and forth about which poll we're going to be saying about it. And I said, my district has polled against it. And basically, it's kind of, the jury is out. The polls are, some are for, some are against, depends on the district, and not everyone has done it. But I said in my speech that this is the worst thing we can do to the people of Hawaii. I got 3 reasons for that, not only because of they're against it, but just as the gentleman just said about his kids. To think that we're going to keep it out of the hands of people under 21 is like saying we will be able to figure out how to keep vaping out of the hands of kids under 21. It's been impossible. So let's be realistic. Secondly, let's be realistic about the black market. The economics of this issue, or the decriminalization, has been the major 2 thrusts of why people have wanted marijuana. The argument about we're going to have a windfall is not developed in any of the Colorado or the California experience. In fact, generally what smart lawmakers do, they bring in the marijuana and then they back out the normal amount of money that they give as a natural thing. So it's kind of a win-lose. You may give me a manini gain, but on the economics, the amount of money we're going to get, I know it's been like in the first year, 39 million, and maybe the 4th year, 100 or 200 million. If you look at what the good prosecutor has said, because he's plugged into the Japanese, that if we legalize marijuana, the Japanese visitors will cease to come, or their numbers will cut down. Right now, the Japanese market is worth $2 billion. You make 39 million on sales, or 400 million, compared to 2 billion, regardless of how you cut it. It's a lose-lose proposition. The other thing regarding the economics is to think that as Colorado and California had a skyrocketing of the black market, do you think that we're going to escape that? When they said the cartels are coming into Colorado, the Chinese farmers have come in, the black market is proliferating. And I know—
Representative, I can ask you to start
sorry,
2 minutes.
I was going to be very brief, actually, because you guys heard this, maybe some of the point is, a majority of those with medical marijuana, sir, are going to the black market because our dispensaries are not working. They're just too expensive and too regulated. So the reality is the net gain is our loss. And that's why I said in the beginning, this is the greatest thing against the people of Hawaii rather than for the people of Hawaii. Thank you for hearing me again. And for some who may have heard it for the first time, I hope they will continue against this. And you guys will listen before you vote, because in the committee that the good gentleman from the west side said, 90% of the people, 80% of the people were against it, and you voted for it anyway. So please listen closely to what the people are saying. Thank you very much. Aloha.
Any other persons wishing to testify? Going once? Oh.
My name is Chadwick Rodan. Marijuana is a gateway drug. According to the American Addiction Center, over 66% of 1,000 American addicts indicated that marijuana was their first substance used. That is saying 7 out of 10 people will become addicted. It also means a lot of lives, lost lives. From my own experience as a drug addict in recovery, a Hawaiian from the west side of Oahu, Nanakuli, I too used marijuana first. Legalizing marijuana in Hawaii is a straight up evil attack upon our future generation, which is our children. Please consider the dangers of legalizing marijuana, because legalization will cause more destruction to our keiki of this land, the keiki of this land of Hawaii. Mahalo.
Thank you very much. Just state your name for the record.
Hello, Chair Nakashima, members of committee. My name is Kai Luke. I am a member of Cannabis Society of Hawaii. We do support this with amendments. It's hard to put a price on saving lives. I'm a DARE graduate, father of two, born and raised in the islands with vested interest in community wellness. One of the many times it has saved my life as a youth was with mental health issues. So for those that are saying that it affects it in a negative way, I'm here in testimony that says it has proven supportive for myself. It has also helped family elderly members on their deathbed. Cannabis has been medically recognized by the Department of Health and Human Services with patent US 6630507 in 2002. If people are addicted to this, they're addicted to health and wellness and homeostasis. The gateway theory doesn't support individual and community accountability as the foundation and bedrock of substance abuse treatment. As far as the strength of cannabis, hash has been around for thousands of years and has had a 40% or higher strength. As far as increase of crime, keeping people in the dark in the black market perpetuates the black market. As far as children, packaging for alcohol and tobacco do not have any safety provisions, whereas cannabis packaging for regulated market does. According to Hina Malka's website, alcohol is the #1 reported drug being abused. DUIs, and we oppose any THC blood quantum limit as suggested. Standardized testing for impairment is already there. We don't need to spend extra tax money on impairment. As far as tourism, I'd suggest to look up cannabisculturejapan.com, where on Google, in Osaka, they have over 1,000 positive 5-star reviews. As far as budgeting, with more education programs for law enforcement, we can understand this better and spend less tax regulating the plant. The spending needs to be reinvested into DEI, and if you consider the numbers, 300,000 Hawaii residents visit Las Vegas where adult use is available. The Star Advertiser reports 58% in support. Based on 1.4 million residents, that's a minimum of 840,000 people in support, not to mention visitors.
I could ask you to start wrapping up.
Sure. I feel that we would have more testimony. However, the current stigma around cannabis creates trauma and PTSD in the community. Just like Iolani Palace had electricity before the White House, we envision leading the nation and continuing cannabinoid research for cancer, epilepsy for children, and autoimmune diseases. Thank you for hearing me today.
Thank you very much. Any other persons wishing to testify? If you can state your name for the record.
Hello, committee, Chair Kaipo Hanakahi. Esteemed member of the committee, I stand before you today in the spirit of truth, reason, and progress as we deliberate on the momentous issue of cannabis legalization in Hawaii. Our decisions today will shape the future of our state, and it is imperative that we base those decisions on concrete evidence, rigorous reasoning, and a steadfast commitment to the well-being of our communities. The first issue I'd like to address would be the crime rates. Contrary to the assertion that legalizing cannabis will lead to a surge in crime rates, recent studies from reputable sources such as the Journal of Economic Behavior and Organization have consistently shown either a decrease or no significant change in crime rates post-legalization. The evidence is irrefutable. Legalization disrupts illegal markets, reallocates law enforcement resources towards more pressing issues, and fosters transparency within the cannabis industry. Source, Department of Interior.org. Cannabis DUIs. While concerns about cannabis-related impaired driving are valid, it is essential to approach this issue with nuance and scientific rigor. Research published and addiction supported by National Institute on Drug Abuse has demonstrated that impairment from THC varies depending on factors such as dose, frequencies of use, and individual tolerance. Moreover, legalization has not led to a significant increase in cannabis-related DUI incidents, highlighting the effectiveness of education campaigns and responsible regulations in addressing this issue. Youth access, protecting our youth from accessing cannabis is paramount. And legalizing provides an opportunity to implement stringent regulations to achieve this goal. Reports from the Center of Disease Control and Prevention indicate that states with legalized cannabis have witnessed a decline in underage cannabis use compared to prohibition-era policies.
Kaipo, can I ask you to start wrapping up?
Okay, wrapping it up. Impact on tourism. The focus on Japanese tourism as a potential negative consequence of cannabis legalization appears to be a strategic diversion from substantive discussions above significant medical advancements cannabis offers to our public health. In closing, let us not be swayed by fear-based misinformation or commercial interest. Instead, let us embrace progress and reason, recognize the vast potential benefits of cannabis legalization for our communities. By prioritizing evidence, collaboration, and public health, we can lead Hawaii towards a future informed and evidence-based decisions-making that will resonate for generations to come. Mahalo.
And thank you very much. Any other persons wishing to testify?
I can go last. My name is John Durua. I just want to give a live testimony of my life. Born June 27, 1952. Played sports in high school. Graduated with 2 scholarships. Started construction in the sheet metal trade 2 days after graduation. I started smoking weed. Jobs got slow, so I figured I could sell some smoke-free. It worked for a little while. I ended up involved in uppers, downers, sidewards, or spills. Then I went to cocaine. Then I went to ice. I tried heroin a little bit, didn't like it. Then I went to ice. 32 years of my life was involved in promotion of dangerous drugs. Just because I thought marijuana was cool. It was cool, but it wasn't the beginning, the coolness. It was the end and the destruction of not just my life, but my children's lives, who also became addicted. I have 3 kids. I've been married 3 times. My first marriage, I had a daughter. She passed away in Ochiposi. She was addicted to crystal meth. I have 3 sons. My 2 oldest sons were addicted to marijuana and crystal meth. My youngest son, who is a UH college student, doing good. He's the brain in the family. Today, and I did 2 years incarceration where I changed my life. Today, I'm the founder and the director of Makano Keakua, which is a clean and sober living establishment, providing services for guys like me to transition out of drugs, out of marijuana, crystal meth, and whatever they need to. Today, my life is a whole lot better. I've changed, and I need all of you to seriously think about this bill. Seriously, think about what it can do to families, not just our generation, but generations yet to come. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other persons wishing to testify?
Thank you, Chair, House members. I am in strong opposition to this bill. A lot of confusion that we're going to make a whole lot of money. by taxing and increasing the tax on marijuana. It's not a proven fact, it's a myth. Going forward, the addiction is the highest addiction rate besides alcohol and tobacco. I stand before you guys today to urge you guys to not move this bill forward. On the devastation of he's not gonna do what all the testimonies that was for it is gonna do. I was the one that wanted the hemp industry, not promoting recreational marijuana. I want the industry to be hemp so that we can grow hemp to help our industry in construction and building trades. But marijuana is not gonna help anybody in the construction industry keeping their jobs in the unions and non-unions alike across the state. Medical marijuana is not the issue here, it's the recreational marijuana. And then, still yet, it's not legal by the federal standards. So you want to say it's good for the kupuna and the people that is ailing. So what if they pick up their marijuana and get busted by the DEA? What if the place that they're buying their marijuana from get raided? And the guys cannot say never got raided. An establishment got raided twice on Oahu. So what is the chances of that? We're making law-abiding citizens thinking it's okay in the state, but federally it's not. There's a reason for it, because it's not good for our kupuna, not good for our communities, and it's gonna lead into higher crimes. In my community, every single one that's on the street started with marijuana, and now they're addicted to crystal meth. I was talking to a lady just the other day when we were leaving downstairs not to have this bill scheduled. She told me, when I asked her, because she started with tobacco, went to alcohol, and then she got addicted to marijuana and took her to crystal meth. When she was incarcerated, lost her children, everything went down spiral by then. I'm not just banning crystal meth, but I'm letting you guys know, I asked her this question. If there was no marijuana, would you have tried crystal meth? She said, no, I'd probably be an alcoholic today and stuck and addicted to alcohol. But because she had that feeling of the next step, and people saying that's not the next step, drugs, but we had hundreds and hundreds of people testify differently. People that was in jail, people that lost their family, their children, lost everything to marijuana. And then we're sitting here. I'll wrap it up. I'll wrap it up. But again, I urge you, colleagues in the House, please save our children. Let's not poison their future, and just continue to move on and not pass this bill. Thank you. God bless.
Thank you very much. Any other persons wishing to testify? Going once, going twice. Okay, we recess for decision making. Recess. Members, questions? Rushing along here too much. Representative Gates.
Could I get the prosecutor? Yeah. Hello, prosecutor. Thank you for being here. I know in your testimony you mentioned about an increase in crime in Hawaii if legalization were to go through. But according to data out of Washington and other states and even Canada, crimes amongst adults and youth have dropped in these states. Were you getting, I guess, your statistics relating to your view on increase in crime?
If it's legalized, the black market will increase. That means more illegal grows. And the bill the AGs, or the information the AGs came up with, includes, I think it's at the moment, 17 law enforcement officers working on illegal activity associated with marijuana. So that's what they are saying in the bill. There'll be more illegal grows. And illegal grows are run by a group we call criminals. and they're going to have guns. They're not going to want, we have guys robbing game rooms now. They are not going to be shy about ripping off illegal grows, and the guys running illegal grows are criminals, so they're going to stop it.
Is that data or is that anecdotal information?
Well, when I'm looking at other states, that's what they have seen. Northern California is the wild, wild west. Places like Oklahoma have huge illegal grows, and it's being sent to other states right around them.
Just on the other topic that you mentioned in your testimony regarding youth access, right now we have zero frameworks besides the medical option for folks to access legal cannabis, but we know that our dispensaries are not selling to our youth, and the real access to youth is in the black market. But it doesn't seem that there is the matched enforcement or targeting of folks selling to youth. So if legislation doesn't pass, what are we going to do to address the same concerns you have right now?
I am all for HPD trying to arrest anybody selling to kids. What I'm worried about is if the bill is passed, we're telling kids this is safe, because they know the legislature wouldn't pass something that's safe. And so that's the concern. I've seen the same research as far as it may not increase the number of youth using. I think what I've seen, the biggest increase is people in their 20s, and we need them in our workforce. But as the two women from the Department of Health came, she said, it isn't an increase in use, it's an increase in severity, that the folks using it are using more often. The numbers using may not be much different, but instead of once a week, it's every day. And she testified to that at the last hearing.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have law enforcement here? Law enforcement.
Afternoon, Rep.
Good afternoon. Thanks for being here. So my question is regards to youth access. This has been probably the #1 issue in regards to opposition for the bill. Mm-hmm. What is currently being done for access to youth right now in our communities? And if we had this framework that allows for more officers to be allocated to go after folks, would this not be a better option than just sitting on our hands and not doing anything about it?
I mean, well, and I don't want to tiptoe around, it's a complex answer, right? So for example, currently, if somebody is distributing to kids and we were to get them, that is something that we would prosecute for. Within this legal recreational bill, the concern is going to be the normalization of it. And what that does is it makes it harder for us to deal with that intermingling between legal and illegal. And I just want to make one thing clear. Law enforcement stance is not against the people that are willing to do it correctly. The concern is the black market. And I think right now the concern to youth, the access to it, is the fact that it's taboo, right? So the people that they're getting it from, it's taboo. They know that. Their parents should be working with them on it. The issue is when you make it recreational, now the taboo is gone. So what's the big deal, right? And that's where the access would increase for youth.
So right now in Waikiki, there's places like Hemptuary that sell CBD or hemp-deprived products that also are on the side, are from reports to my office, are selling actual cannabis. And I believe you folks are aware of that. Is there any attempt to go after those type of entities that are operating in our face in the gray market right now?
Absolutely. Of course, we are limited with resources, just like our game rooms, right? We have over 80. That just because there's 80 on the island doesn't mean that we support that. It's just we are limited with resources and we can't get to it. So as regards to that specific investigation, I can't obviously disclose where we are with those types, but yes, we would prosecute when the evidence is presented to us.
So with that reasoning, if this bill is to pass, there's obviously funding for additional officers and resources that you're saying you need to actually go after these individuals. So wouldn't this be a better option again than rather just the latter of not doing nothing?
I mean, like I said, I hear what you're trying to say, but the issue with law enforcement, we can't even staff what we have. So even if you guys gave us $20 million, we don't have the bodies to go out there and help with the regulation of it. And again, with Oregon, They're literally saying there are upwards of 1,000 illegal grows, right? So even if we had a tenth of that issue, which would be 100 illegal grows, you would need 20 full-time officers easily to even get close to regulating that. And we, like I said, right now we only have 4 in the Honolulu Police Department, and we're having trouble staffing the rest of the other issues in regards to hard drug crime, game rooms, human trafficking. And yes, unfortunately, marijuana does move down the ladder compared to those crimes. But the issue here is that when you make it recreational, I think you're probably okay for a few years until the stigma of it goes away. And now it's kind of like, marijuana is not a big deal. Fast forward for my kids. Like right now, for example, as a parent, I can easily tell my kid, no, you can't go over there to their house because the boy smokes marijuana, right? He's an adult, he's of age. It's easy. But what's going to happen 10 years from now when they're parents and they're saying, why, Dad, it's legal over there, right? And now they have all these access to things that we know are harmful for them. And of course, self-regulation for some people is easy. But as we've seen in our most impacted communities, the ability to self-regulate is not there. And that's why we have all of these concerns.
My last question for law enforcement, regarding the real issue, I think, in our community regarding opioids and fentanyl and meth. In regards to your ranking of those issues and what you guys are doing to address it, it seems like it's being conflated with cannabis in terms of meth usage and the violent crimes that are taking place in our communities. So where is the department's position on going after, these different levels of drugs and activity in our community?
Right. So, of course, the fentanyl is the number one right now, something we're going after. And then, of course, meth has always been something that we prioritize. Marijuana has always been lower. And again, it's in comparative to the impacts that fentanyl and meth have on our community.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much.
Can I ask a question of law enforcement?
Barati.
I'm going to read a couple of products, and can you tell me if these are the kinds of products that you're concerned about getting access for kids to get access to in the community? Things like THCA diamond-infused pre-rolls, Munchies Fruit Jam Delta 9 gummies, Trey House Cannabis Cough Syrup, Slushy Juice Live Resin Disposable Vapes, Space Club Moon Sugar THC Blend Disposable Vapes. Are those the kinds of products that you're concerned with?
I don't know them by brand, but depending on their component, then yes, if it is illegal, we are concerned with that. If it has Delta 9.
Okay, so these things might have Delta 9. These are items. Can I show them to you? So
Sure.
I'm reading off of these. You don't have to move. These are things that you can get online in stores in Waikiki that you can sell. These are the types of things that are of concern, correct?
Sure. Yes.
All right, thank you. Can I have a follow-up question with with Attorney Generals? So I understand that, the industrial hemp industry does not want to be placed into this regulation. But having just listened to the products that I read off and all of these things, these are the types of things that this bill is trying to regulate so that we can have better control over products that are currently in our marketplace. Is that correct, Mr. Goff?
Oh, yeah, and actually I will ask Deputy Attorney General Andrew Goff to come up because he's the author of several chapters in a leading cannabis desk book on hemp and hemp-derived cannabinoids.
So this legislation will regulate these kinds of things that are currently available to tourists and to, I think, 18 and over people, adults.
That's correct. The one of the intents of drafting the bill was to include intoxicating hemp products to make sure that these kind of things are either not for sale or are regulated similar to medical cannabis and recreational cannabis products.
So these legal products that are currently in our state are not tested in a way that's satisfactory to public health and Department of Health standards. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So currently there is a consumer protection threat that we're presenting to tourists who might be coming through Waikiki. And I understand that these kinds of businesses are actually in hotels, that there's delivery services that deliver cannabis on demand, or hemp-derived cannabinoids on demand. Is that true?
Yeah, that's absolutely 100% correct. And, one of the bigger issues that we do see with the commercialization of these intoxicating hemp products is they are largely unregulated, or the regulations that exist are not enforced. And so part of the bill regulates it and prohibits certain, or at least gives the authority the power to prohibit certain products, and also provides funding and an enforcement mechanism so that the authority can go out and actually crack down on some of these shops.
Okay, and then so for example, if a police officer stopped someone and they had these kinds of labeled products, this would immediately, under this law, be something that would be a person could get arrested with, because these are products that are not compliant with the labeling and consumer protection measures that we have in this bill. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, depending on the product and the severity, if you're selling it without a permit, or if you're selling a prohibited product, that product can be taken off the shelves, you can be fined, or if it's severe enough, there is a criminal provision.
Okay, and then have we seen like a decline in tourism because of these kinds of hemp-type businesses in?
I can't really speak to that.
Okay. Do we have maybe not, do we have anyone from finance, from DOTAX? Can I, Chair? And this will be my last question, do we currently know what the taxation rates are on these hemp-type products that are consumables? No, I don't care about the industrial hemp, hemp to create hempcrete. That's not touched by this bill. But do we know what the tax rates are on these types of products that we see being sold in Waikiki?
Assuming they're not taxed under the medical rates, they'd be taxed at the typical 4% GET rate.
Okay, so these are the kinds of products that possibly youth are also getting a hold of, and we're not gaining additional monies for law enforcement or any kind of consumer protection.
Well, I can't speak to whether or not the dealers or the retail merchants of those products are paying GET. I'd have to look specifically at that, and even if so, I couldn't disclose it in front of the committee because it's confidential taxpayer information.
Okay. Can we get a sense can you tease out from this industry how much tax that they might be paying in aggregate?
Sure.
Because then that will give us an actual better projection of the financial, because has that analysis been done?
Sure. The Department of Taxes Research and Planning Department has estimated that over the next 5 years, so starting in 2026, 27, 28, 29, and 30, the estimated increase to the special funds in the bill will be $4.4 million in 2026, $17 million in 2027, $25.5 million in 2028, $38.2 million in 2029, and $42.5 million in 2030.
Is that based upon existing businesses like this one, in addition to, what was the basis for that numbers?
Sure. So we first looked at estimating the total market sale and just figuring out how big the market would be across the state if this were to be implemented. So looking for total sales, we went about that by two methods. The first of which was by looking at the National Survey on Drug Use and Health produced by the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. Based on that, we looked at the amount spent by Hawaii residents and domestic and international visitors on cannabis. That came out to an estimate about $279 million a year. In addition to that, we also looked at the market and all of cannabis sales in states that have legalized cannabis sales, and we took that on a per capita basis and applied that to Hawaii. So that figure was $429 million total for sales. Because those two numbers were pretty disparate, we took the average number of both of those to calculate the entire market. That'd be about $354 million in total sales for a market. Our research and planning division has estimated it'd take about 5 years to get that fully up and running. That's been consistent with the experience in other states that have legalized cannabis. So initially, we're not going to realize that $354 million market. In addition to that, we've also looked at other factors that would be considered for sales. For instance, 20% of the market is going to be estimated to be paying at the medical rate, which would be lower under the cannabis tax, so about 4%. The retail rate would be applied to the rest of the 80% of sales, so that'd be 14%. So looking at those figures, we came up with the figures that we provided to you. We've also looked at the amounts necessary and the impacts to the general fund necessary for enforcement, and that came out to $2.5 million each year and a revenue loss to the general fund just to implement this with the staff and the necessary regulations.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Members, any other questions? Representative Onishi.
Yeah, for the Attorney General. So what is the basis for the availability of those products that Rep. Bellotti showed in Hawaii?
So the basis for the availability of those products in general is the 2018 Farm Act, which basically allowed at a federal level certain hemp products. Hemp is the same plant as cannabis, but it just has a lower THC content. It's one that by definition has 0.3% THC9 per what is it per? Yeah, by dry weight, basically. So that's the basis, is that there's a federal law that allows for that. And then basically since that time, initially the hemp, before sort of the Delta 8 became available, there was initially a kind of like a glut after the Farm Act came into effect, where there was an oversupply of hemp. After that point, there became mechanisms for basically isolating different sort of extracts, whether it be THC9 or the so-called Delta 8 products, which are not studied in any way and are not really deemed safe by any health experts because they could have things like metals, and it's just really not known what's the health effects of ingestion of that kind of products are. They're kind of new to the market.
So does Hawaii have the ability to regulate those products?
I'll defer to Andrew Goff here.
Yeah, thanks, Rep. We currently do have regulations for hemp and hemp-derived products. There is no funding for enforcement, and the regulations aren't as nuanced, or the enforcement power is also not as there as the bill would implement.
As in what?
As the bill would implement.
As this bill?
Yes, correct.
Okay, so what was the decision-making thought of the AG to go towards legalization of cannabis versus regulating those hemp products?
Sure. So this is a question that goes back almost a year at this point. The Attorney General was approached by several legislators about assisting them with crafting a bill that would take into account as many of the public safety and public health issues that are inherent with regulation, and attempting to craft a bill that would address them to the greatest extent possible. The Attorney General, as has been stated, does not support the policy objective of legalization, but believes that if the legislature chooses to legalize cannabis, it should do so in a moderate way with balanced legislation that takes into account the public safety and public health to the greatest extent possible. With that being said, we've said that there's no guarantees in this. We agree with much of what has been said by others regarding the risks. In fact, that's in our report. That's one of the reasons why, the bill is as long as it is because it takes that much thought and care to go into that. That being said, if that is ultimately what the legislature chooses to do, we're glad that there's an alternative to be looked at here, because other states like California, like New York, like Oregon, have proceeded down paths that have not taken public safety seriously, and they have paid dearly for it.
So, in your opinion, would the AG's office be opposed to amending this bill to just look at the regulatory and enforcement of the hemp products versus legalizing cannabis?
That's a legislative determination. We have no opinion on whether you should do that or not. But, it seems like a...
But would that address the concern of the AG in regards to the health issues that this bill may or may not address in terms of its general scope?
Well, not exactly. I think that the issue of hemp-derived products is one aspect of the bill. We think it's an important aspect of the bill to really sort of have a cohesive omnibus piece of legislation. That being said, there are other aspects regarding health that I think indisputably cannabis that is sold from a dispensary that is subject to testing regimes, that is ensuring that there's no pesticides on these things, that there's no chemicals on these on the product as it goes out, is indisputably safer than anything that you could buy on the street. So just with respect to health concerns, for cannabis generally, I'm not sure that would address it. I think that it would address perhaps an issue with Delta 8 and other cannabinoid hemp products.
Okay, but this bill does not address other health issues like respiratory problems, heart problems that might be caused by the consumption of cannabis.
So those are, to the extent that those are inherent with cannabis consumption, those are things that can only be mitigated by either through education or through, basically grant programs that are intended to facilitate, for instance, with respect to mental health services within a given state and things of that nature. And so there are provisions in the bill that attempt to address those issues. We are not in any way guaranteeing that it's going to solve any of the issues.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Yes, Representative.
Question for Ms. Shirota of ACLU, please.
Aloha, Representative.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
So, as you know, many people have been sent to jail for simple marijuana possession at an enormous cost to our society. In lost wages and family disruption, there's the incarceration costs, the loss of jobs, and income tax revenue. Could you estimate the good that this bill would potentially do in preserving our families, keeping them intact, and increasing our tax base?
Yes, I think you've already heard about sort of the tax implications and revenue generating. Again, when you regulate and tax, you can use some of that money and earmark it for public education, for family strengthening, for youth prevention programs. And again, we have this system that's kind of focused on punishing people, separating parents and children, and even criminalizing our youth. And we actually have, in the last 15 years, moved away from that system. At one time, we kept increasing the number of youth that we were punishing and incarcerating. And we decided that that was not helpful for the youth and for our families. And so we shifted, and it took judiciary, community, lawsuits to say, let's invest in evidence-based practices to get the help that the youth need, bring in their families and provide counseling and support. And so currently right now, I'm hearing a lot of concerns, but we know that there are youth that are using cannabis and other drugs. Again, let's put the funding to provide family strengthening. Instead of using the money to punish people and not change behavior, let's give them the support that they need. And in turn, that contributes to safe communities, safe homes. And I always want to share this data point because I think it's very realistic and hones in on our values. We currently spend more than $90,000 to incarcerate one adult, and we spend over $200,000 to incarcerate one youth in our current system. And we spend less than $10,000 to educate one child in our public school system. And I think all of us here need to look at that formula and switch it. We need to educate, not incarcerate, and help families thrive, not incarcerate them. And this is generation after generation. Thank you so much
Thank
for the
you.
question, Representative.
One more question, please, for Mr. Medeiros sitting in the back. So, Mr. Medeiros.
Yes.
Thank you for your testimony. I believe you indicated that you openly indicated that you carry a 329 card. Is that correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay, so I have a question. My health insurance will not cover a 329 card.
Okay.
Does yours?
Not at all.
Was it an expensive process to obtain your 329 card?
Yes, it could be, to a lot of people, for sure, You got to pay the doctor, you pay the state, so it ends up to almost $200 at a year, per year, every year, it's,
So for the economically disadvantaged, it is a cost prohibitive practice to
it's-
try and obtain
yeah.
the 329 card.
Correct. I have a lot of friends who can't afford it, so they end up going to the illicit market for marijuana, They don't have to pay the extra cost, every year, so.
Okay, that's
Thank
good.
you very
Thank
much.
you. Thank you, Chair.
Representative Onishi?
Yeah, for the ACLU.
Aloha, Chair.
Oh, I missed.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you for
I
being here.
apologize, Representative Onishi.
Do you have any figures or data in regards to the effect of alcohol in terms of incarceration and impact to families in terms of domestic violence, and all of the other things that alcohol use has created in our society?
So, Representative, I don't have hard data for you, but I believe that there are others likely who have submitted testimony can pull up the data. But I want to share I didn't mention this. I previously worked for MEO, Maui Economic Opportunity, a nonprofit program on Maui. We helped men and women who are incarcerated transition back home into the community by providing case management, family strengthening, cultural support, housing, job training, holistic services, giving people the opportunity to transform and become contributing members of their family. And at the time, we received some federal grants and state grants focusing on the population who are convicted of serious and violent offenses. And when you looked at the population that we worked at for a number of years, they could attest to you that if there were crimes that were serious and violent, it oftentimes related to drug use relating to meth, cocaine, heroin, alcohol. I can't think of any client that we had at the time who said that they were high off of cannabis.
Well, that's not my question, though, but thank you for sharing that. How much money from alcohol use do we put into treatment?
That I don't know, but maybe the Department of Health might be able to better answer that question.
Okay. Do you know how much money we put into education from alcohol use?
That also I don't know, Representative.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Any other questions?
Chair. Quick question. For the Attorney General. Mahalo for being here and your work on this measure. In regards to the previous questions relating to the hemp-cherry stores and things of that nature, you indicated that the reason why it's currently legal for them to do that is in regard to the Farm Act of 2018.
That's the general origin of the legality of hemp generally and hemp-derived products.
Got it. And we all can witness that it's proliferating in our communities, kind of without any regulations right now, from my understanding.
I hear there's one at Ala Moana Mall right now.
Yes, yes. So on that same line of thought, if Congress is to pass legalization of cannabis, what type of control will the state then have if we don't have a current framework in place?
Well, I think that would very much depend. I mean, this is just pure speculation right now. But I mean, I think that it would very much depend on what the act of Congress looks like. There's whether it's removed from the schedules of the Controlled Substances Act or some other sort of broader legalization policy, I don't know. So it's very difficult to say whether, Congress would want to exert some broader control over the states or whether it would just basically allow the states to continue to act. It's kind of a guess game.
Will the state be limited in its actions to, I guess, limit mainland or foreign corporations from, I guess, taking over the market?
Well, I think that one of the things that's kind of interesting about sort of some of the laws that have come out since it's illegal right now is that there's a provision in this bill that basically requires that a licensee have been a resident of the state, for 5 years. And the reason why we placed that in the bill, normally that would be subject to challenge under numerous provisions of the Constitution, among other the Dormant Commerce Clause, Privileges and Immunities Clause. There is case law from federal courts, and we have it in our report for the legislature to consider, that in fact there's case law that says that those provisions don't apply to federally illegal products. So so that's actually one of the kind of ironic twists of illegality. In virtually every instance, federal illegality is very detrimental to the program that would be in place, but here it provides at least one option to keep it local. If it becomes federally legal, then those provisions would apply, the Dormant Commerce Clause, privileges and immunities, and it would open it up to all the commerce, interstate commerce.
So what I'm hearing is that it would be more beneficial for us as a state to legalize it before the federal government does, because it gives residents a leg up for those people living here 5 years and longer?
Well, to be clear, I didn't say that, but I think that's just one of the the question was surrounding sort of the aspect of interstate commerce and how that affects cannabis legalization regimes today. The law is unsettled in the circuits about the extent to which these provisions, Dormant Commerce Clause, privileges and immunities, apply to the marijuana market when it remains illegal under federal law. But we have just suggested that as an option to address some concerns that have been raised about mainland corporations coming in. Again, this is just one of the aspects of the Attorney General's work in terms of trying to craft a bill that was, that was in the interest, or that tried to protect public safety, public health, state interests to the extent possible.
One of my final questions for you, in previous testimony given by Governor Lingo, she characterized this bill as giving poor people money to start dispensaries and targeting low-income communities. Could you kind of give us a elevator speech on what was crafted in the social equity portion of the bill?
Sure, and so just to clarify, the social equity provisions in the bill, these weren't something that were created in a vacuum. This was something, in fact, social equity provisions and licensing was something that was strongly recommended by the DOH report of the Dual Use Task Force, and basically that was something that was beneficial. In legislation in other states, in virtually every single state that has enacted it since, 2015, social equity licensing has been an aspect of that legislation. And what that means in various states could differ, right? And one of the reasons why we chose to include it is we believe that some states went too far with it, and we wanted to give a moderate option instead. Some social equity and licensing programs rewarded people with felony convictions, or even if they were and basically that if they had some sort of record, that they would be rewarded with government grants. We think that that's not productive, and that shouldn't be in there. Instead, what we put in the bill, or in the AG's draft of the bill, that was presented to the legislature on January 5th, 2024, was something that merely stated that if individuals have either an ownership interest of 51% or more, and they lived in what's called a disproportionately impacted area, that would be something that they would be able to obtain grants, and those impacted areas would also be eligible for nonprofits to receive funds from the special funds for things like youth centers, after-school and summer programs, childcare, and these types of issues that we think where it seems like we would be able to use legalization for whatever it's worth, but certainly the tax dollars to fund the less privileged areas of our state.
So you don't agree with Governor Lingo's assessment and characterization of it?
I think, I have a ton of respect for Governor Lingo. I think that where we disagree is that there's nothing in the bill that mandates that any business be located in poor locations.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Members, any other questions?
This question is for former Governor Linda Lincoln. Thank you, ma'am, for coming and testifying. Could you share with us your thoughts on the ethic of the ends justifies the means, so the benefits of the taxation of cannabis that fund then going to education and things like that. What are your views on that?
Well, that's why this bill is being put forward, is because people believe it's a moneymaker. There's no other reason to legalize something that has so many negative side effects and have been shown over and over, psychological effects. And now there's the most recent one on heart and stroke, which if you haven't seen it, I can send that. So the motivation, and I've questioned, what is the motivation for this? Why do it? And it keeps coming back, it's going to generate a lot of money. I'm not certain it's going to generate a lot of money. And as you heard me say earlier, when I made a reference to gambling, gambling would generate a lot more money than legalizing marijuana, a lot more money, substantially more money. But we've never done it. The legislature hasn't done it over and over again. It's never really reached a vote because the impacts on us as a state, we're a small state, we're a fragile state. Our society is fragile, our economy is fragile, and I heard the references to the tourism several times today. The organization that specifically brings Japanese tourists to Hawaii, they brought 1 million tourists last year. They said this will hurt their ability to attract visitors from Japan, because in Japan there is not even medical marijuana. Marijuana in Japan is on the same level with crystal meth. It's the same thing there. It's not seen as illegal. It's seen as illegal. If a celebrity in Japan is caught with marijuana, that can end their career. That's how serious it is. So people say, but they still go to California. But the reason people go to California and the reason they come to Hawaii are very different. People's expectations when they come here is that we're a family-friendly place, we're a safe place, not to be walking down Waikiki and having people smoking marijuana on the streets. It's just not how people see us. So I'm really concerned about this bill. And as someone from the Woodstock generation, I think someone made that a comment earlier, it's just a different drug today. It's clear. Everybody will say that that's the case. I just don't see why. And Rep. Onishi was asking some really important questions here, which are, how much do we spend now on alcohol education? How much do we spend now on drug education? I work with the Women's Prison Project, and I'm not testifying on their behalf today, but I can tell you, working with a lot of women in prison, this is a very serious issue, and almost every person who's gotten in trouble because of drugs started with marijuana. There's just, I think that just goes without question. I'm just really concerned about Hawaii's future. The economy being very fragile right now, uncertain times, why we would want to spend so much upfront money on something like this. Even if you believe strongly it's a really good idea, is this really the right time? I think is a fair question to ask.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you.
Governor?
Mahalo, Governor, for being here. I know you know what it's like to try to balance the budget here and find revenue-generating sources of income rather than taxing more of our residents and businesses and cutting our budgets. And right now, there is a current discussion amongst the legislature of cutting departments' budgets for 15%, right? And then you, as governor in 2009, 2010, had to make the tough decision to do furlough Fridays. Would you think that having additional tax revenue from something like cannabis would have been better than having to cut the taxes or cut hours for students in our classrooms and teachers' pay?
As you heard from my testimony earlier, I believe that legalizing cannabis is really going to harm our state. It's going to harm the people. It's going to harm the communities. There is no monetary justification for bringing about all of these ill health effects in people. So, you know, I've often, I look back on Furlough Fridays from time to time, Rep, because I say, gosh, remember the uproar? Because there were 17 in total. There were 17 Fridays that were furloughed, and then we got furloughed for a year and a half. So yeah, at that time it was, do we lay people off? Do we raise taxes? And after the '08 financial collapse, it was, we felt the reasonable thing to do. The Department of Education chose Friday. We thought that was a big mistake because that's when extracurricular activities occur, but that was their decision and their call. But
Thank you for
I just
that
think
insight.
at this time, I would ask all of you, think just really hard about this. I just think it's very harmful to us long term.
Yes, and I think the data that we're looking at is the opposite of what you're saying. So that's the hard part for legislators.
And I
think. So
understand, and I
mahalo.
know everyone has the best of intentions here, and I don't question your point of view. We just have a difference of opinion on that.
I appreciate that.
Thank you, Rep.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Are we done with questions, folks? Okay, we will recess for decision making. Recess. reconvening the Committee on Consumer Protection and Commerce. We're in conference room 329. It's Tuesday, March 19th, and we are here back for decision-making. First bill up is SB 2536, SD1, HD1, related to procurement preferences and reciprocity. Chair's recommendation is to pass this out as is. Members, questions or comments? Seeing none, Representative Tam.
Thank you, members. Voting on Senate Bill 2536, SD1, HD1. Chair's recommendation is to pass this as is. Chair votes aye. Vice Chair is excused. Rep. D'Amato? Reservations. Rep. Bellotti?
Aye.
Rep. Hashem? Rep. Hussey Burdick?
Aye.
Rep. Gates?
Aye.
Rep. Lowen?
Aye.
Rep. Onishi?
Aye.
Rep. Tam votes aye. Rep. Pierik? No. Chair recommendation is adopted.
Okay, thank you very much, members. SB 2505, SD2, HD1, relating to the Public Utilities Commission. Chair's recommendations, we pass this out as is. Members, questions or comments? Seeing none, Representative Tam.
Voting on Senate Bill 2505, SD2, HD1. Chair's recommendation is to pass this as is, noting the excused absence of Vice Chair Sayama, who will be excused for the rest of the agenda. Any members voting with reservations?
Reservations.
Rep. Amato with reservations. Any other members voting with reservations? Any members voting no? Seeing none, Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you very much, members. Senate Bill 3010, SD1, HD1. Chair's recommendations pass this as is. Members, questions or comments? Seeing none, Representative Tam. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, no, yeah, as is.
Okay, voting on Senate Bill 3010, SD1, HD1. Chair's recommendation is to pass this out as is. Any members voting with reservations? Reservations for Rep. Hussey Burdick. Anyone else voting with reservations? Any members voting no? Seeing none, Chair, your measure is adopted. Your recommendation is adopted, sorry.
Thank you very much. Senate Bill 3365, SD2, related to plant care components. Chair's recommendations that we defect date this July 1st, 3000. Members, any questions or comments?
Chair?
Representative Onishi.
Yeah, the Department of Ag had some recommendations for amendments and as well as the Farm Bureau to help clarify the bill. I think those are important amendments. Can we include in the committee report?
Yeah, I will include those in the committee report. I was under the impression that it was already in the bill, and they changed.
No, it's not in the current version.
I'm sorry. I will put
In the
committee
SD1,
report.
I mean SD2. There is no HD1.
Okay, I will put it in the committee report.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Okay. Members, any other questions or comments? Seeing none, Representative Tam.
Thank you, members. Voting on Senate Bill 3365 SD2. Chair's recommendation is to pass this out unamended. Any members on it?
With amendments. Effect date, July 1st, 3000.
Oh, with amendments. Oh, sorry. Let me do that again from the very beginning. Voting on Senate Bill 3365 SD2. Chair's recommendation is to pass this with amendments. Any members voting with reservations? Any members voting no? Seeing none, Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you very much. SB 2500, SD2, HD1, relating to value-added products. Chair's recommendation is to pass this as is. Members, questions or comments? Seeing none, Representative Tam. As is, as is.
Okay, voting on Senate Bill 2500, Senate Bill 2 HD1. Chair's recommendation is to pass this out as is. Any members voting with reservations? Any members voting no? Seeing none, chair recommendation is adopted.
Thank you very much. And the members finally on the last bill on the agenda. Chair's cognizant of several proposed amendments to this measure. AG's concern regarding the University of Hawaii, dispensaries concern regarding product lines and other things. The only amendment that the chair would like to make is to add in a labor peace agreement, an agreement between the cannabis establishment and a bona fide labor union at a minimum protects the state's proprietary interests by prohibiting the labor organization from engaging in picketing, work stoppages, or boycotts against the cannabis establishment. So that would be the only amendment that the chair would like to make to this particular bill at this time. Members, any questions or comments?
Brief comment.
Yes.
Thank you, Chair, for hearing this important bill, and thank you for your well-reasoned and thoughtful amendment. I support that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you,
Chair.
Representative Onishi.
Yeah. You know, I think that there is portions of this bill that may be important in terms of our regulatory process, but the legalization of cannabis, I don't think the state of Hawaii is ready for it at this point. I think it has a lot of potential harm that it could create. The amount of funding, I think that's people are thinking is going to come in, is not going to be realized. Hawaii is very different from the other states in terms of, how we operate, what's the focus that we are trying to create in Hawaii. With that being said, I have a hard time thinking that this is really going to help Hawaii and our residents. So I'm voting no at this point. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Any other comments or questions? Representative?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just want to say, I know this has been a productive discussion relating to a lot of the concerns brought up by folks in the opposition. And I think that this bill is taking the best practices across the nation amongst the other 24 states that have already passed the legalization bill to try to do something to address the issues that we currently face, whether it's people selling CBD products or hemp-deprived products in our communities with no regulation, or going after individuals or entities selling to our youth. I believe that this bill will provide funding as well as the personnel to really get a handle and have oversight, which we currently do not have in this free-for-all market with the illegalization of cannabis. So I just want to thank the chair and members for moving this measure. Mahalo.
Thank you very much. Any other comments or questions? Representative Kirk.
Thank you, Chair. I have several concerns about this bill, so I'll be voting no for the following reasons. I surveyed my district, and those who returned the surveys, 40% wanted this bill to pass, 60%, over 60% didn't want this bill to pass. So in representing the majority of my constituents, I'll be voting no. There's also been multiple studies conducted in Colorado, and the results are that legalized recreational marijuana would increase crime. One of the top two concerns of my district is they want crime to decrease. So in alignment with their feedback and having gone door to door, I'll be voting no for that reason. And you don't have to be a mental health counselor to know that when you take substances, it can impair your cognition. And I want my constituents to be the best they can be, and all of Hawaii to be the best they can be. So I don't believe that impairing their cognition with recreational marijuana is good. So I'll be voting no for that. Also, I believe it was last Friday, 23 out of 51 representatives voted no simply to get this bill to this committee. We didn't even want it referred. And so my hopes is that this bill doesn't become law, and I'll be voting no.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, with amendments, Representative Tam.
Thank you. Voting on Senate Bill 3335 SD2 HD1. Chair's recommendation is to pass this out as an HD2. Noting the no votes for Rep. Onishi and Rep. Purick. Any other members voting no? Sorry, I'm out of order. No vote for Rep. Hashem. Anyone else? Any members voting with reservations? Okay. Seeing none, chair recommendation is adopted.
Okay, thank you very much, people. We are adjourned.